coffee if we need it. The restrooms are just out and to the left. And in case of emergency, this is the closest exit right here. So just go on out. I'm sure most of you know Lars Eric. Lars Eric has been in the emergency management world for many, many years. Formerly, he was with CARD, and Eve and I are very fortunate to have Lars Eric join their staff. So please welcome our instructor today.
Hi there, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Good, and thank you, Sandy, because that's the first two bits of business I always like to do: is where are the restrooms, and how do we find our emergency exit? Just to clarify one other thing, Sandy, after we go out of this building, do we have a rally point or gathering point that's specified?
I'd say just the parking lot.
Okay, just at the parking lot, so no specific spot. Good. I always like to gather because that's always the quickest way to do kind of a head count. Because right now I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 people are in the room right now. So great. So I am, here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about something called the Incident Command System. Would you please raise your hand if you have heard the term or know anything at all about Incident Command System? Good, good. So the bulk of you guys have at least heard the term. Just to clarify at the outset, this is the Incident Command System for community responders. This is not for first responders. So please don't make the mistake of thinking this is a substitute or instead of the ICS 100, 200, 300. You know, FEMA has these numbered courses that people can take. And after you take the courses, you get a little certificate. And after you take those courses, sometimes your brain hurts a little bit. And that's great. It's good to have those. This was developed for people who don't have 2 days or more to spend on training an incident command system, as wonderful a system as it is. This was actually developed for nonprofits and community-based organizations. So it's meant to basically be a condensation of ICS and the parts that are appropriate for community responders. So I just want to kind of clarify that from the outset so you know what's going on. If you then go on to take the FEMA courses, that's fantastic. And I've had it work both ways where people take this, say, I want to know more, and they'll go through the more formal courses. I've also had it work the other way around, where people have taken the formal courses, go like, I don't quite understand that. I did this once for a organization up in Napa called Becoming Independent, and they'd gone through the formal courses and were kind of confused. And we went through this, and all of a sudden light bulb went on because we're trying to be very tactical, practical, and concrete. I'll get more into that later, but so that's what we're going on here, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I am with Eden I&R, and just to sort of give you guys a fast bit of background, I have a slightly unusual first name. My first name is actually Lars Eric. It's kind of like Joe Bob, but Swedish. So there's double first names. Last name's home. I grew up in Alaska as a teenager. I lived in a Yupik Eskimo village for about 18 months. I lived elsewhere in Alaska for about 10 years. But they actually have a word, which I don't really know how to properly pronounce, that basically translates as always getting ready. So in a sense, I was actually kind of brought up for this. I grew up in this kind of environment. When you grow up in a place like Alaska, being prepared for almost anything, because anything can happen, and you're out there very remote, right? More about the background. Sandy mentioned my work with CARD, Collaborating Agencies Responding to Disasters. This approach to ICS and the approach to preparedness that I take comes from CARD. We focused on helping nonprofits prepare to prosper. I currently work for Eden I&R, more about that in a minute, but I also worked for a company that made backup software. So how many computer nerds? By the way, you know, don't be shy. Good, welcome. So you know how, in fact, I love the motto. The motto for dance development retrospect was, to go forward, you must back up. And when you work around computers for a while, I mean, do things ever go wrong with computers? No. Never. Computers work always perfectly. Westworld, nothing can ever go wrong, right? So, you know, when you work around IT and computers for a while, you kind of have that mentality of being ready for anything that might happen and being able to recover from it. So a lot of my career, prior to my work with Collaborating Agencies Responding to Disasters back in, I think I started with them in 2008, still is in that vein. And that's also kind of what I would encourage you guys to do is think about your backgrounds and think about the skills that you have and how those actually approach. You know, one of our mottos is that your everyday brilliance transforms into your disaster resilience. So it's not some set of skills you have to pick up just to used only for disasters. The skills you already have are useful. And this skill we're going to cover today is also useful in everyday life. So ICS is not just for earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, zombie invasions, flying saucers landing. ICS is actually a fantastic project management tool, and that's the approach we're going to try and take here. You know, who doesn't love Gary Larson? It's a crisis clinic club. It's a crisis clinic going over a waterfall with a fire. It's on fire and it's flooded. So, okay, I just want to real fast. How many of you guys know about the phone number 211? Please raise your hand if you know about 211. Great. So 211 is a phone number that you can call when it's not 911. That's the simplest way to put it. Give me some examples of when you would call 911. Fire, good. Another example? A health emergency. Be specifically what? Heart attack. Excellent, excellent. Any other examples? Yes, sir.
Crime happening.
A crime happening, exactly, right? So crime, heart attack, fire, flood. You got to have a responder right here, right now. Life is full of other kinds of emergencies, though, right? I'm hungry. I'm homeless. I have a family member who's feeling suicidal. I'm a veteran, and I don't know what to do. I just moved to the state. I actually just got back out of prison. I'm re-entry. I'm trying to find a job, and I'm having really hard to find a job. I'm an immigrant. I'm not actually an American citizen. We actually had a colleague of mine who's a school teacher who has a boy in her class whose mother is not a U.S. citizen. She's married to a U.S. citizen. She's in an abusive situation, and she thinks she's trapped. She's not. There are actually resources for that. So Eden INR has been linking people to resources for over 40 years. We've been doing this for a long, long time. So when 211 became active in 2007, we've been 10 years of doing 211, we were the natural choice for that. So it's basically a critical lifeline. It's not our only program. The other programs are people like me doing disaster trainings. That's also a program that we have. We also have an HIV/AIDS housing referral program, things of that nature. But our biggest thing is being the fact that when you dial 211 in Alameda County, you get us. You get Eden INR. Oops, let me go back one. Sorry about that. So it is, silly me. Okay, so it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely free, completely confidential. We're constantly updating our resources. It's any kind of health care, housing, or human resources is it. When you call, you get a resource specialist, and this is why I think it's kind of important, because they'll ask you questions about your situation. And actually, I mean, not to sound too Northern California about this, but they take a holistic approach to the call. So you might be calling, for example, because you need to find housing very quickly. And they'll ask questions like, are you in a criminal situation or abusive situation? Because then crime prevention service can be brought in to bring in some resources for that kind of thing. You know, we had a woman who once called who was calling about CalFresh, what used to be called food stamps. Because of other aid she was receiving, she did not qualify, but her kids did. Her children qualified, and that brought in some extra money into the household because she didn't have to go scrambling and trying to find food, which made a big difference in her job search, just made everything better. So that's what 211 is really all about. So I kind of want to get into that because it's just, I mean, emergencies, and this is just a small sense of the people we serve. I mean, there's so many different categories, so many different categories. I have an author that I like. In fact, I just gave somebody my business card, which is a bookmark, because I really like books. Who likes books? Yay, books! And the author said that Google can bring you back 100,000 answers, but it takes a librarian to find you the right one. Eden INR is that librarian for human resources. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I want people to know about 211 in general, but a lot of the times, folks will know about 211 the way I just described, especially if you're in social services, and not realize that you also would want to call 211 in a disaster. So if I could hand a stack to you to pass around. If I could hand this to you to pass around, great. So 211 is actually a number you would call after there'd been an earthquake, or a flood, or a fire, or a tornado, or the zombies started marching, because you'll have questions. Questions like, should I stay or should I go? Should I shelter in place, or should I go to a shelter? Where are the shelters? How do I keep zombies from biting me? Turns out duct tape makes really good armor for that sort of thing, right? Actually, it's kind of interesting too, because keep in mind that 211 is a national number. You can call 211 anywhere in the US. Right now, as I speak, our call center is taking overflow calls for 211 Texas. So when people are calling 211 Texas, if all their lines are busy, some of those calls roll over and they get us. And then we look things up in the Texas database, because the databases are all cloud-based nowadays, right? And then we can actually tell people resources like where the shelters are. Here's what you should do to apply for aid. So 211 has a very, very critical role in disasters. So if this was not about ICS, but just about 211, I'd be pretty much done with my presentation right now, right? So 911, all the reasons you guys said. Everything else you call 211. Healthcare, human resources, housing, you name it. This is our seat at the Emergency Operations Center, and as far as preparedness goes, I go to lots of trainings, workshops, and exercises. In fact, I was just talking to Sandy about an exercise that to lead into the statewide medical health exercise, where you do scenarios. So we're constantly in that vein. So we're there to be in a disaster. And you know, there's always the disaster and the immediate aftermath, and then there's the long-term aftermath, right? So we actually, in 2005, played a very instrumental role. Oddly enough, a lot of people after Hurricane Katrina relocated to the Bay Area. And they're actually expecting some of that same thing, perhaps. They're not sure, you have to see, for Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma. Some people end up relocating to the Bay Area, and we've got the biggest housing database in the nation, actually, for even though it's Alameda County centered. So, all right, I don't think I need to go into our plans, just know that we've got them. I mean, the fact that we can take calls for Texas shows how the 211s can be like flexible and on the ground. Any questions about any of that? 211 disasters, good. I always like to start with that because I think it's an important place. Now, I pretty much already focused a little bit on what we're going to be doing for the ICS. It's a different kind of ICS than the more formal trains you might have had. And it was developed by an agency called CARD. How many people know about or remember, actually, how many people remember the Loma Prieta earthquake? Raise your hand if you actually remember that quake. Okay, raise your hand if you know about that quake, the Loma Prieta earthquake. Okay, a couple people can raise their hands, so I'll for a real fast explanation. In 1989, during the World Series, which was the Battle of the Bay, because the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's were playing, and all of a sudden the camera started shaking because there was an earthquake, a very, very large earthquake. And all the sports reporters suddenly had to become disaster reporters. And it became very clear in the aftermath of the quake, and you know, part of the Bay Bridge fell, the Cypress structure collapsed, there were some fatalities, certainly lots of damage. And the thing that was really critical is a lot of nonprofits struggled in the aftermath. And that's not good, because nonprofits are really, really important to the needs of large segments of our community. It was so important that 3 agencies, oh look at that, E9R, and the Emergency Services Network and Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency, they still exist. Do you guys know them? They're based in Berkeley. They focus on homeless issues. So they both got together along with United Way to champion preparedness for nonprofits who serve vulnerable communities. So I can refer to it as a nonprofit preparedness movement. So we are, CARD was basically by, for, and with agencies. CARD, sadly, due to lack of funding about a year and a half, 2 years ago, had to fold due to lack of funding. The funding got pulled. It's hard to get funding for disaster preparedness. It's such a tough topic to want to raise money for. But our motto was prepare to prosper. We actually focus on how we frame things. We actually focus on the why. We like to start with the why first, and then go into the how and the what. How many of you guys know TED Talks? So TED Talks are these online talks where people speak about certain topics. A gentleman named Simon Sinek, they call this the Sinek Circle, although CARD, because we're kind of a heartfelt organization, put the heart in the middle instead of the circle. And he said a lot of times people will take the approach of doing the what and the how and barely get to the why. And he was actually advocating the other way around. Start with the why. So, why, share with me, why would you want to take some steps for yourself or your family or your agency to be prepared? Save lives.
So people know what to do.
So people know what to do. So who do you guys serve?
My staff,
Your staff? Great. What agency are you with?
I'm with Bananas Inc.
Oh, Bananas. Okay, so child care. Okay, child services. So why is it important for Bananas Inc. to stay on your feet?
Because we have first of all, we have a lot of families in our building all the time, and we have our staff to consider, and we need to stay operational because we serve people in the community.
And the age range of the children that you guys serve? I'm kind of familiar with Bananas.
Probably 0 to, I would say 0 to about 12, 13.
So a wide range of very young children. Bananas Inc. is a very important agency. So why? For the kids. For the kids and for the staff, right? Once you start with the why, then the hows and the whats can kind of grow out of that. Plus, this is a much, much better motivator. It's a much, much better motivator when you actually have that why established. So, just want you guys to consider that. Making yourself fundable. I know that there was one person talked about actually making sure there was a person who served seniors. They were senior housing. So for them, that why was very important, making sure we're fundable so that we can actually stay on our feet. So, I mean, just because money is involved, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean it's not for money, right? Okay. All right, so Loma Prieta earthquake happened. 2 years later, there was the Oakland Hills firestorm. Raise your hand if you were here in the Bay Area for the Oakland Hills firestorm. Quite a few of you, good. Now, for those of you who didn't raise your hands, do you know about the firestorm, though? You know what happened? In fact, my personal story is that my wife and I were walking back from Grand Avenue after getting a Halloween costume for our very young daughter, and we looked up at the sky, and it's almost like there's an eclipse. The quality of the air was really peculiar, right? And then we got back we lived off Park Boulevard below Highway 13, but as we started watching the news and such, first two things went in the trunk of our car were the diapers and the photo albums. First the diapers and the photo albums, because it's hard to replace photos in those days, right? And then I was also trying to field some calls, family from Sweden. By the time you take square miles and convert that into metric system, and then, Sweden's not that big of a country to begin with. I mean, California's almost bigger, right? They thought the entire state was up in flames, so they were really, really concerned about how we were doing. And despite the fact that it was after the earthquake and millions of dollars had been invested already to make sure this would never happen again, kind of happened again. In fact, Senator Nick Petras lost his home. His home burnt while fire engines were in front of it. And a couple of folks are nodding, so I think you know this one, but do you know why? Why did that happen?
Nozzle size and connections.
Nozzle size and connections. There was a lack of standards. In fact, I had two firefighters from two fire departments that got into the C3P 6480s didn't fit I'm making that up, but yeah, so the nozzles didn't fit. Not good to not have standards when you respond to an emergency, right? So because of that, they created a thing called the Standardized Emergency Management System. Now, I'm sorry to say that the world of emergency preparedness is laden with acronyms. You can hear SEMS and NIMS and ICS and et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to try to stay away from that as much as I can. Have to touch on it a little bit because it's kind of unavoidable. But they'll hear this thing called SEMS. It's a Standardized Emergency Management System. And it was developed to have a way to have a common language or set of standards for emergencies. SEMS basically has 5 parts to it. Standardized Emergency Management System has 5 parts to it. There is, the incident command system. And I know a lot of you guys picked up items as you guys came in, right? You guys should basically have 2 pieces. You probably should have one of these colorful posters. And you probably should have one of these sheets that's got like an organizational chart on one side and some information on the other. So does anybody not have these yet? Good, you got them. Good, very good, very good. So if you take a look at the organizational chart, it's like an org chart for an organization, right? It's got a commander up top, the incident commander. It's got public information officer, safety officer, and liaison officer underneath that. And then underneath that, you basically have team chiefs that basically head teams. And it shows who reports to whom on that. So pretty classic. This guy, on the other hand, I might refer to this one a bit more often just because I like the pretty colors, is what we used to call a potty poster. So CARD had what they call the potty poster initiative. Place signage anywhere you have a captive audience, like the bathroom. So if you actually used our restroom at our office, you'd actually be really well educated by the time you were done. Because we had posters about how to shut off your gas, posters about how to prevent the flu, posters about ICS, you name it. We had all sorts of cool things there. And quite frankly, you would often see stuff like this located in hallways outside classrooms, by vending machines and bulletin boards, that kind of thing. It's the same sort of thing, though, kind of turned sideways. You see the incident commanders up top wearing a crown. You see that the safety officer saying, stop, don't go in there. That's the only stern one. So it's job descriptions. So ICS is all about having roles or jobs and what those responsibilities are. In addition to that, and ICS fits into this framework, they have this concept under the Standardized Emergency Management System of operational areas, which in California is basically the counties. So you have the Alameda operational area, which is basically Alameda County. unincorporated areas included. Contra Costa operational area. And this is basically all about knowing where your services and resources are, where your supply caches, where are your personnel, where are your equipment geographically located. A step up, I'm sorry, not step up, but around that, communications. In a disaster, raise your hand if you think communication is going to be important. It's going to be critical. In fact, I actually ended up talking to a gentleman at a meeting I was at. He was talking to us over the phone from Texas, from a neighborhood outside Houston. And it was interesting because he said that the power in his neighborhood stayed up most of the time. Cell phones worked okay, not for talking so much, but great for texting. He said, but by far and away, their biggest communications tool was social media. That's what actually worked for them. Most folks have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, et cetera. You know, ham radio operators, a lot of the hospitals, for example, have ham radio operators connected with them. You know, people have multiple tools on their cell phones, et cetera. In addition to that, you know, first responders have the operational area, that's the OA, satellite information system, that's the SIS, OASIS, which I think is a very relaxing name. And it's basically satellite communication so that if the ham radios aren't working, and the cell phones aren't working, if nothing's working, they'll have the satellite system have communication links within and between operational areas. The concept of mutual aid, agencies being able to call upon each other for aid for big incidents. So that's why you'll often sometimes see for a big incident, you might see patrol cars from neighboring jurisdictions. You know, or you might see fire engines from other jurisdictions. And then the idea of multi-interagency cooperation. If people are speaking the language of ICS, using the same terms like liaison or logistics, then it makes it easier to work together effectively. So that's the 5 pieces of SEMS. So also 5 levels of escalation, if you will. Let's imagine that right here, right now, so I can do something making too much of a shadow, I start a fire right here. I don't know how I did it, I dropped something. What's the first thing that should happen? Try and put the fire out, very good. What else? Evacuate, good, we're a room full of people, get away from the fire, good. And you know, since I started right here, that door is maybe a little bit blocked. So you guys know where to go next? Out that way, good, good. Anything else should happen? Where is the fire extinguisher? Where is the fire extinguisher actually? Yeah, not in this room. So I probably would start looking out there, next, probably in the hallways. That's where they usually keep them. And they usually have nice signage about it. So cool. Where's I gotta go with this? Okay, so fire start right here, right now. So that's it. It's fire extinguisher. So does everybody know? Slight digression. There's an acronym, and it's probably one of the few acronyms I do like to encourage people to remember. There's a little acronym, part of a phrase, for effectively using a fire extinguisher. Do you guys know that one? PASS. Very good. PASS. PASS. Please hold your hands in front of you, and please repeat loudly and clearly after me. Pull. Aim. Squeeze. Sweep. I like it. You know that's what I got it right, right? Yeah. So one more time. Pull. Aim. Squeeze. Sweep. Why am I making you do this? So you remember, and I'm sorry, you said?
So we know how to use it properly.
Actually, properly use it. I like to use the phrase muscle memory. Right? You want your muscles to actually have this in your memory. Later this afternoon, I'm going to be at a middle school helping with an evacuation drill. And I've already helped a church in the unincorporated area work on their evacuation drill. And the point is you do it because reading about it is great. The actual doing of it is what really counts, right? Especially when the emergency happens, your brain's going, oh, right? So pull, aim, squeeze, sweep, pass. So now we know how to use a fire extinguisher. Guess what, however? I'm sorry to say that somehow it's escalated. So what happens after that? Call 911, and who's going to respond first is probably going to be fire department for, because where are we? Alameda County. And are we in an unincorporated area?
San Leandro?
Yeah, San Leandro, okay. And see, that's an important point, because the unincorporated areas, you get the Alameda County Fire Department. In the city of San Leandro, you're going to get the San Leandro Fire Department. When you're on the borders, it's a little fuzzy sometimes. You know, I live in Oakland, but we're on the near the Piedmont border, and there's areas like, is it Piedmont? Is it Oakland? We're not actually sure, so.
Yeah, Newark and Union City, they both use Alameda County too.
Yeah, so Union City and
Newark?
Newark both use Alameda County, yeah. So who's actually responding might depend on where you're physically located, which is why you sometimes get your operational area or county involved. But classically, it's like local, city, operational area respond. Beyond that, you have the region. And I've seen this divided up a couple of different ways. You know, Cal OES, if you go there, they have 6 regions. But for our purposes, and for the purposes of the standardized emergency management system, you want to consider 3 regions. There's basically coastal, southern, and inland. So coastal is basically us up to the border. Southern is basically SoCal, and inland is not the other 2. You know, so don't worry too much about the borders of that. Just be aware that if things get beyond even the operational area's ability to bring in tools and resources and personnel, then the region will bring in personnel. And sometimes this stuff happens in the aftermath of a disaster for the cleanup, you know, for the cleanup and the recovery phase of things. And then above that is, of course, the state. So Cal, Office of Emergency Services. SEM started in California, so it's a state concept, but obviously above that you get the federal government, you know, FEMA. Okay, so 5 parts, 5 levels. Standardized Emergency Management System, ICS is a part of that. Now I'm giving you guys a lot of background. Yes, excellent. I was just going to ask any questions about that. Thank you.
Why do we have so many agencies, and why aren't they all compacted together? I mean, we had an incident here in San Leandro,
Mm-hmm.
and we're one way in, one way out,
Mm-hmm.
and we had all this stuff that you just put here.
Mm-hmm.
We could not go out, we could not go in, nothing.
What was the incident?
The two boys had guns and
Oh.
that was it. But still, we could not go out, we could not go in, and I'm looking at all these agencies,
Mhm.
and I felt like, you know what, a waste of time. They sat there for 4 hours.
Mm.
4 hours and we could not go out. So for me and for our communities, I'm a representative for Davis West.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw all of this, and I'm going, is this our money going, sitting
Mhm.
for 4 hours?
I'm just making a note. You said Davis West. 'Cause I want to.
Yeah, so, you know, I looked at it and I felt like, you know, they just sat there, all of them,
Well.
just sat there.
So and let's talk a little bit more about that afterward if we get a chance. I'll try to see if I can be available, and I'll come right to you. Thank you. Part of it is because it became very clear that when incidents become really major, it's beyond the capabilities of a single agency to handle. In fact, you may recall, we went back, in fact, you don't mind going back, there's the whole idea of, oops, I'm sorry, I need to go back a little further. The multi- and interagency cooperation. And the reason why is because with both the Loma Prieta earthquake and the Oakland Hills fire, the lack of coordination between agencies was just devastating. In fact, even with some of the more recent disasters, some of this lack of coordination and lack of people communicating with each other, the same languages, is not good. Now, it sounds like in this case, it was an incident that didn't escalate beyond what they needed to have people available for.
And they
But
brought that big.
Yeah. And I don't know enough about the details, so I think that's why I want to talk afterward, is get some more details from you so I can ask some people I know about that. But it's generally better to have the resources available to respond if it does escalate than not the other way around, if that makes sense. So let's talk about that some more. So make catch. I do have to leave quickly, but I will trade business cards, and then we can chat later time, because I'm going to have to leave for an afternoon training. But yeah, that's good, though. And you had your hand up. Yes?
I was just going to say the different agencies, if you just look at the Oakland Fire, how quickly they came together, I think they did an excellent job
Yeah.
to put the fire out.
Yeah.
Now, they bring in helicopters and everything like that. I don't know if that's Alameda County and State, but they were able to put the fire
You're talking about the fire yesterday, right?
today.
Yeah.
Were right on top of it.
Yeah, in fact, one of my colleagues, her house is actually like across the street from do you guys know about the fire that happened yesterday? No. So there's a place that we call the Quarry. It's basically a little housing area. So as you're on 580, not far from the Oakland Zoo, they had a big fire. And when I first saw the alert that said Oakland Hills Fire, I went looking really quickly. This is while I was at the, actually it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before, wasn't it? It's all blurred. This has been a busy week for me. 2 days ago, okay. Anyway, it's all been, this week has been one big long day. So, long story short, I got concerned because I live in the Oakland Hills, so I wanted to find out how far away it was from where I lived. For me, I was fine, it was like 6 miles. But the quarry is like a little housing division that's by a former rock quarry, so it doesn't have a lot of accessible roads. In fact, my youngest daughter has a friend who lives there, and they had to evacuate. But they did a very nice job, and a lot of reason why that response worked out well for fire services is in fact because of ICS. And I should stress that ICS started in fire services. In fact, I think the next slide is going to show that. I've done this so long that I just kind of do this off the top of my cuff. Yeah, started in fire services, but it's used by public health. It's used by law enforcement, and it's used by nonprofits, and especially because of this. So yeah, it's hard to say because, I mean, it sounds like in your situation there were too many resources, but then in other situations like Harvey and Irma, there haven't been enough. You know, and I know the guy from that I was talking to from Texas was a little concerned because they were actually having sheltering issues. You know, his house was actually okay, but he was in a neighborhood that was on the outskirts of Houston, right? And they had like one road in, one road out. The first search and rescue people he saw were from Southern California. He didn't see any search and rescue people from Houston. They were all too busy in Houston. The first people that made it to his neighborhood were from Southern California. So it's one of these things where they have a tendency to mobilize a lot of stuff to be ready. It's kind of like the reason also why you'll sometimes see a hook and ladder and several other fire vehicles respond and drive up there even though they're not really needed, because you don't know until you actually get there. Sometimes people report one situation and then you get up there, it's like, oh, that's not what I expected. So you sort of have to carry it. Oh, I like authors. So Stephen King, the author, asked his grandfather once why he carried his entire toolbox with him just to fix a doorknob. And he said, well, Stevie, whenever you go somewhere to fix something, you should always have your toolbox with you. So I think it's that kind of approach, I think. But let's talk more, too. Don't let me get away from you. All right. So, nutshell, fire services. It's about the job description. So you look at those posters, there's your job titles. California, this is how they do it. It's part of the standardized emergency management system. The entire US, they call theirs NIMS. Remember I warned you about acronyms? National Incident Management System. By the way, you'll actually see this in other countries. So my former boss at CARD actually been to Japan, where they talked about this a lot. It's how government agencies respond, and it's how you qualify for funding.
NIMS, what FEMA calls it also?
Yeah, nationally they call it NIMS. Yeah, National Incident Management System. Good question. His question was, is that what FEMA calls it? Yeah. So, you know, to some cases, you guys might have to go through the more formal trainings that I'm giving now in order to be demonstrate that you're compliant for funding purposes. But we're hoping to give you here today, what I'm trying to give you here today is meant to be tactical and practical, you know, stuff that you can actually implement. Any questions about that? Those are good questions. Thank you. All right, let's get into it. Our approach also is that ICS is a thinking tool, a bridge and a lifeline to work as partners, and leadership training. This actually helps you become a more effective leader. And it can help you as an economic development tool. We're actually going to cover an example today where ICS was used to apply for a grant. So people actually got money using ICS as their project management tool. So, it's strong enough to be the standard all across the country and even internationally. But we're going to do an example right now of how you can use ICS to be used by just a single person. Please imagine, because now we're going to get into meat and potatoes here. This is my favorite part. All the rest is like the preamble, right? The prologue. You know, we did Hobbit, and now we're doing Lord of the Rings. Okay, so imagine your home. You're in your kitchen. Your tools are around you. You know your favorite recipes. Some guests are coming over. You're busy cooking, preparing. Da la la la, off to set the table, right? And then, rah! Raise your hand if you've ever had to deal with a kitchen fire or any kind of small fire. Okay, oh, good. I'm not good, but I mean, I'm not alone. Sorry about that. I mean, good, I'm not alone. Not good, oh, you had a kitchen fire, right? My personal story about this is that a number of years ago, my wife and I were in an apartment. I was baking some salmon, which for some odd reason, the recipe called for lots and lots of olive oil on top. I don't know why, because I mean, salmon's pretty oily anyway, right? But you know. And I heard this crinkling sound. It sounded like tin foil. So I pop it open, and the salmon's on fire. And I can basically guarantee that my reaction, and it's funny because I did not make this PowerPoint, but there's a fish in it. My reaction was something along the lines of, oh no, maybe a little stronger. So I ran out into the hallway, where in our apartment it basically said, in case of fire, break glass. And the fire extinguisher was there. Guess what I discovered? It's really hard to break the glass, exactly. I had my slipper off, and I was banging on it, and then my wife, who is an extremely sensible person, fire's out. And what she had done was she'd popped it open, and she'd taken a wok lid, because you like to do Chinese cooking too, and she put a wok lid on top, and closed it up and smothered the fire. So I put the fire out. Of course, you know, we also have had to use the fire extinguisher. We could have done pass, but we didn't even have to mess the kitchen up with a fire extinguisher because she just smothered the fire. So put the fire out, pass. Yay, we win. By the way, quick side note, it looked awful. Terrible appearance. It was probably still the best salmon I've ever made. Almost kind of like Cajun burnt salmon or something like that, right? So, all right, so fire's out, salmon's been saved, but we're not finished yet. Because of course there's always the aftermath. Changed our plans. In this case, food's ruined. Got to contact your guests, basically clean up the mess, because there's always a mess when you have stuff like that, right? Plus, what are the neighbors going to think when they see or smell smoke? Yeah, fire, call. So it's okay, Lars Eric's just cooking salmon again, don't worry about it, I got to get a new recipe, right? So you let them know everything's out. Also, non-emergency number, because it's not an emergency anymore. You contact the fire department, and they're probably going to come anyway. Why?
You want to be sure that you got it out properly.
Make sure you got it out properly. And you were saying?
Yeah, basically the same.
Basically same thing, yeah. I just like to give everybody, yeah, good. Because, the Oakland Hills fire, they thought that fire was out, right? And then it turned out it flared up again, so that's not a mistake they're making anymore. In fact, the fire we were just talking about, I believe they still have some people on site, because, it's been very dry right now. It's been a very hot September. And then you clean things up, right? Got to clean up the mess. So notice kitchen fire guy here, gloves, bandana or face mask. Why? Smoke, right? And you said? Chemicals, fire, that stuff is not stuff you want to inhale. So aftermath of a disaster and proper cleanup. That's why on the potty poster you'll notice that's the stern looking face. The face that says, no, don't do that, that's not safe. You got to wear your helmet. You got to wear closed toe boots. You can't go there until we actually checked it out. Safety officer is one very, very important aspect of response to a disaster. Off you go, and you don't just look for your own safety, of course, but safety anybody else might be coming up. Put a chair or something up, what floor, right? And then, of course, you got to figure out what it all cost. Maybe there's some insurance involved here, right? So that's our one-person ICS for a kitchen fire. Yes, ma'am.
Can you still use baking soda to put out the fire? That's also about years ago.
Say again?
Baking soda.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what do you not want to do for a kitchen fire? Do you guys know? Water. Yeah. I talked to somebody at a recent training. Somebody made the mistake of using water, and they're okay. Their kitchen, not so much. Things really splattered and messed up. Also, if you get a fire extinguisher, let the people, go to your local hardware store, and they have this way overly complicated coding system. Just basically tell them what you want it for. In fact, that's actually been the thrust of a lot of the trainings and exercises I've been at. Instead of getting all these specifying your exact type, tell them what you want to do and let them help you find the tools that'll do it. So tell them you want a fire extinguisher for a kitchen. Now, baking soda as well. In fact, that was actually one of my favorite commercials, was a guy who was so brilliant that even as an infant, when there was a kitchen fire, and he was in his high chair, he threw his toy and knocked the baking soda off the shelf into the fire and put it out. So yeah, not water. Fire extinguisher is great to have. Smothering's great. That's actually my first response, since my wife did it that way. Yeah.
I was going to say, what you said earlier was important about calling 911 for non-emergency, because right next door to my grandmother, she's a senior citizen, and someone was cooking. And they tried to put the fire out. I don't know if they thought they put it out, but later on it caused a big fire. But my grandmother's connected to them. She got out, but the person didn't get out. So
Did they? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
About a year ago.
Oh, gosh.
Allen Temple Arms.
Oh, Allen Temple Arms, near Allen Temple Baptist. I've done a lot of work with Allen Temple
Right,
Baptist,
so
yeah.
Her wall connects right this to the person who had the fire.
Oh,
They
no.
smelled the smoke, and they were able to get my grandmother and him out, but it was too late for them.
Yeah, and we actually had this, in fact, for National Night Out, we had this thing called Program Your Cell Phone for emergencies, because it's an awesome tool, and doing the non-emergency numbers for various cities. And actually even emergency numbers, because you know what happens when you call 911 a cell phone? Kind of depends on where you're at, Some places you get local now, but most cases you get the highway patrol and they gotta ask you where you're at. So I actually have had for a long time, I've had the emergency and non-emergency numbers for Oakland, Berkeley, Emeryville, and San Francisco, various departments. It's just a great thing to actually have, because then you don't have to worry about looking it up. It's in your phone, right? Thank you for, I'm so sorry though, for your grandmother's sake. Yeah, so calling in the aftermath is very important.
And the person actually died from the smoke inhalation
Oh.
after the fire, so.
I was at an event where they actually had what they called a smoke trailer, and that's exactly what that's all about. Most people in fires, that's actually what happens, is they become overcome. So you guys know what you do, right, when there's a fire and there's a lot of smoke? Yeah, you get down. You try and get as low as you can. If you can, anyway. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, all right, so here's our summary. So taking responsibility, and you guys can check what's on the chart and such as well. the incident commander. So the incident commander, top there, one executive director at a training I did said, I'm the queen. So that's the incident commander, is the sort of the ruler of the entire person who's being taking charge. Safety, security. I said that's the stern one, right? So one of my trainings, we had somebody who was an elementary school teacher. She spends much of her career saying, no, don't do that. Don't put that in your mouth. Don't put that up your nose. Gotta wear your shoes. No, no, don't do that. She became the safety officer. Elementary school teachers make great safety officers, right? Working with other agencies. Working with other agencies is called liaison. For kitchen fire guy, which slide was liaison?
His wife.
Himself. He's the only person there.
Working with other agencies. Yeah. That's the liaison.
That was his story.
That was his story, yeah. Well, it's a bit of the liaison. So now the other thing is, so liaison is the person who works with other agencies. In fact, you'll notice on the poster, the liaison is being shown with a cell phone talking. No, I'm sorry, it's showing shaking hands. It's a person shaking hands. Whereas the public information is on the cell phone talking. Which slide was public information for kitchen fire guy? Yeah, talking out the window to the neighbors, right? And the only reason I kind of hammer on this point a bit is because your liaison officer and your public information officer, by the way, you'll often refer to as the PIO. And when I first learned ICS years ago, I saw on the news and there was a person wearing a helmet, and the helmet said PIO on her helmet. I know what that is, it's public information officer. So traditionally, the public information officer stereotypically is, well, Frank, as you report to KTVU News, Lars Eric was cooking salmon again, caused yet another fire, So it's kind of the person who basically gets the information out to the public. Nowadays, how do people get their news nowadays? Social media. Public information officer has to be on top of his social media like nobody's business. CDC learned that with the H1N1 virus. They stay on top of basically rumor control, for example. So this is public information officer. This is liaison. But the people who fill those roles often have similar or overlapping skill sets. They both tend to be articulate. They both tend to be connected. They both have good communication skills. These are both kind of communications related. It's just who are you communicating with? Another way to think of it is the liaison officer has got the Rolodex and knows what other agencies to call to make something happen. It's like, we got a fire here and we can't deal with it. I need to call on some help. The people got to go to meetings and can actually bring in other people to help them out. Public information, on the other hand, is the media and social media. Make sense? And we'll get more into this, but I'd like to point that out early on so it makes it a little easier for the exercises later. Operations is the actual doing of stuff. So for fire departments, about 80% of ICS is operations. They're actually out there fighting fires and putting things out and helping people. Logistics. Best way to think of logistics is to do two terms. People and stuff. That's logistics, is people and stuff. What's more important? People, totally, right? Stuff will just sit in a pile and mock you if you don't have people. People, on the other, people by themselves can MacGyver it. If you don't have stuff but you have people, they just look around the room and like, well, let's use that table, use that chair. We'll MacGyver it, right? You guys all know MacGyver? The guy who could think his way to situations? Good. Planning. For planning, think timeline. So how many of you guys have to go to like meetings, staff meetings, right? So staff meetings, the person who sets your agenda, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, turn that sideways, there's your timeline. Milestone, milestone, milestone. So planning is timeline, logistics is people and stuff. And then finance and admin, is, of course, is a lot about your record keeping and cost recovery. That becomes very important in disasters because there is the possibility, and I will have to stress possibility, that you can get reimbursed post-disaster for extra efforts you had to put out. But in order for that to happen, you've got to be able to document. So I worked with somebody named Sarah Finnegan at Eden INR, who was active in the Lake County fires. And she kept really detailed records, which led to them, I think, 1.25 years later, finally getting reimbursed. And the only that happened because she kept very strict records on timesheets, who did what, when, etc. And there's no guarantee of that, but if you don't do it, then I can pretty much guarantee you won't. So, right? Okay. Make sense? Any questions so far about ICS? All right, deep breath. All good? Titanic. Guys know that one? How many people have seen the James Cameron movie? You know, My Heart Will Go On, etc. Oddly enough, given what I do, you'd think I'd have seen that one, but I haven't. I've seen the earlier one, the black and white one that happened one night. But you all know about it, right? It's the ship that was unsinkable, which hit an iceberg and then sank, right? So let's pretend maybe we're time travelers. We know stuff for sure. We know the ship is definitely going to sink. We know there are not enough lifeboats. Who got the lifeboats? The first-class passengers, right? It's funny, some Chinese people go, women and children. You see, yeah, but which women and children? The first-class ones, right? Guess what? We're not them. We're on the deck of the ship. All the lifeboats are going away. We have 2.5 hours. So they call that a hard stop. We have 2.5 hours before the ship goes down. What are we going to do? Good. Get out. How?
Any way you can.
Good. Name some ways you can.
You could take the ladders as they throw over the deck, you can get out that way, but just get away from the ship that's come down.
Just go for the ship's coming down. So you know she shared the idea of ladders. Now we are in the North Atlantic, right? Which is kind of a cold ocean. So let's take that thought that you had there and let's kind of continue rolling with that. What are you going to be concerned about getting away from the ship?
Cold.
It's very, very cold.
It's dark.
It's dark.
There might be sharks.
Might be sharks, especially if you've been watching Jaws lately, right? Yeah. Da, 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 da.
Well, you'd look for something that you can hold on to keep you.
Look for something you can hold on to. I'm sorry, you were saying?
You can't swim that much water. I will probably start praying first. Because
Yeah.
you can't swim that much
Right.
water, you can't drink. So, I mean,
So keep, and you mentioned ladders, which are made of rope
Well, not metal, yeah.
or metal. Actually, remember, this is turn of the century, probably a lot of wood, right? Titanic was like about 10 stories tall if you made it into a building. So what do you think is on Titanic? Do you think there's a lot of wood on there, especially in those days? And wood does what? Right. So, building rafts. That'd be a good suggestion, right? Because as you said, you can't swim that long. It's cold. Got to worry about sharks. Yes?
If I knew it was gonna go down, I would also start trying to radio out to the people who could come and help us.
Right.
So
Right.
they would be on their way sooner.
Right, right. And as I recall, you know, they did have some. In fact, somebody reminded me that this was one of the first times they'd used the signal SOS, which is funny. I thought it was older than that, and apparently not everybody actually knew what that meant in those days.
So I think they waited.
Yeah, there may have been a delay on that one. Yeah, I know. Also, in those days, especially, it took a while for things to respond. So, in fact, this is a point I often like to bring up: is who are the real first responders? The people are on site, right? So you often have to be able to do stuff for yourself. And just the recent spate of incidents we've been having, a lot of people have been having to take care of each other and themselves while they wait for the responders to get there. Keep in mind that the Red Cross has pointed out that if we had a major catastrophe, like a slip on the Hayward Fault, it's going to take about 3 to 5 days for Red Cross's volunteer base to be able to get to the area to start setting up sheltering and such. So that's why they have websites like 72hours.org. You know, people are encouraged to get themselves kind of set up for 3 days minimum. I'd recommend 5 to 7. You had your hand up first, yes.
Is it the International for Help is the X,
SOS?
letter X, like let's say you're in the jungle,
Mhm.
and then the X is it? Yeah, is that International for Help?
I had not heard that. I've always heard SOS.
I heard
Does it cause-
Does the SOS stand for Save Our Ship?
SOS is controversial, actually. Nobody's quite clear what it stands for. One of the reasons they apparently chose it for Morse code, because SOS dates back to the days of Morse code. It's da 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 da. So it's very easy to type, and it's so ingrained now in culture that whenever people hear, it kind of sounds like, okay, there's an emergency going on.
Because I watched
Yeah, save our ship. That's one thing they kind of say, but.
last week or 2 weeks ago, I watched on TV show How to Survive by these two professionals, and
Mhm.
he said letter X of you in the jungle, you know.
In the jungle?
You put
Okay.
the big letter X so helicopters can see you. The international sign for help.
Well, oh, you can place it on the ground like an X. Okay, that's a little different. Okay, because I had not heard that. Although making some kind of a sign on the ground, and an X is easy to make. That makes sense. Some kind of signal on the ground. Often in movies or TV shows, you'll see people also do SOS, like a big S, a big O, a big S, out of like white rocks or something. The only reason I'm also questioning that is because when you do evacuations, if we all evacuate, and I take my Sharpie marker, and I put a big X on the window, or an X on the door, that's telling the fire department that we've evacuated. So that actually means this space is safe, that the space is clear. And when they're going through the building, they'll probably check to take a quick look anyway, but you're basically telling people who are checking the building. So the building I used to work in, I was the floor warden. And when if we did our evacuation drills, we would actually leave a sticky note with an X on the door to indicate that I had checked that floor, and that floor had been cleared. So X has multiple meanings. Yeah. Now, if you're in the jungle or trapped on a desert island, you put like a big X on the ground. I mean, if you put anything on the ground, that's obviously not just by accident. People flying over like, hey, somebody's down there. So actually, my favorite thing, if I were going to do it, oh, I don't have my unwrapped one. Okay, well, I don't want to unwrap this. I would probably take my Mylar emergency blanket. Notice how I'm deliberately holding a light? And I probably would like unwrap it and spread that out on the ground. Because that's nice and highly reflective. It's a big, shiny silver blanket. So yeah, anything to make a signal. So what was the show?
So is that you use that at night? What is shine?
If people had lights on it, yes. It's very, very reflective. So even a little bit of light will shine back very, very, very brightly. Yeah, exactly.
Or you could make reflective tape a part of your emergency kit.
A lot of people like to put tape in their kits, matches, tape, things like that. You know, deck of playing cards for different reasons. Yeah. What was the show? The show you're talking about?
How to survive.
Okay.
by Bear
Oh, Bear Grylls. Okay, got it.
and another handsome white guy, forgot his name.
Yeah. So putting a signal on the ground, that would definitely make sense, but I would not say that X is an international signal in all cases for emergencies, because, for example, I know that an X on a door means that we've left the room, that this room has been safely evacuated. Now, I saw another hand up, I think. Yes, sir.
Well, during this Houston thing, some of the first responders were actually Texans, and they're very proud to be a Texan.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd see these guys, well, I have my own personal boat. He was out rescuing people, but they were first responders in effect.
That's right.
But
That's
their
right.
own people were there. So I think it'd be a good idea to get acquainted with your neighbors. And also, in that respect, if you know someone, it's more likely to respond to an emergency
Yeah.
if you don't know them.
So do you guys know about the term? I'm going to switch to a notepad for a second here so I can type this up for you. Can you guys see that? Let me center that a little bit so you can see it. So have you guys heard about this? So CERT. So Community Emergency Response Teams. Now in Oakland it's called CORE, Citizens of Oakland Respond to Emergencies. And that grew out of the aftermath of the Loma Prieta earthquake, when neighbors near the Cypress structure actually got their ladders out of their garages and went to help people. San Francisco calls theirs NERT, which is the Neighborhood Emergency Response Team. Kaiser calls theirs BERT, the Building Emergency Response Team. So a whole variety of these things. So these are programs that you can get connected to that will actually help you do exactly that, become a good neighbor. Because the idea is that it's great to respond and help your neighbors. A little bit of training isn't a bad idea to make sure you can stay safe while you're doing it. And they teach you things like how to do light search and rescue, certain amounts of triage, how to actually practice with a real fire extinguisher.
I took that class.
Yeah, how was it?
Awesome.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah. Now, it takes a bit of an investment of time, so if you don't have that time, there's shorter things that I can show you guys how to do as well. But often I'll do like a short safety kept in place training, and then people will then graduate to go on to like a CERT or a NERT training. So yeah, exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. So it's exactly that too. The first responders are the people who are there. And having some skills, having a skill set can be critically, critically important. All right. And kind of segueing into that, so we are a bunch of neighbors on the afterdeck of the Titanic. And we're finally decided we're going to build life rafts. And we're going to use incident command system as our structure for that. And you feel free to look at the sheets there. So the incident commander, what's the incident commander going to do? Assign people to different tasks. That's exactly basically a stand up, take charge, ladders, do this, do that. I understand you're a carpenter, right? Things like that. Logistics, I'm sorry, operations. Operations is the actual building of the rafts. What kind of people do you want on your operations team? And who do you want for your operations chief? Handy people, yeah. People who've got skills, right? Carpentry skills, construction skills. Now, your operations chief doesn't necessarily have to be able to do that herself or himself, but the operations team does. So the point I sometimes make is that the operations team definitely have to be people who can do the things you have to have done, but the operations chief could be Professor Hawking, who would just basically would give commands, to people, what they do. Somebody who's smart knows how to organize them. Now, what are they going to build the rafts with? Whatever's on board, like furniture, doors, planks, floatable things, which the Titanic had plenty of. Anything that floats, doors, poles. Now, sheets. We have sheets on that list. Let's play a brief moment to MacGyver a sheet. So imagine I have, this is a very small sheet, obviously. Let's imagine we've got a whole bunch of sheets. What can we do with sheets? Make a rope, good. Go ahead.
I just said time together.
Time together, good. Signal, good.
Slow the water intrusion through cracks.
Okay, plug the cracks so things won't leak so quickly. Very good. Plug cracks.
To stretch across stuff so that you can fit like a hand, where you.
Like a sling or a hammock?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, good. Like a sling or a hammock to carry things. Very good, very good. Any other thoughts?
Cover your mouth.
Uh-huh. You were saying? Yeah, keep smoke out. Good, good.
I think I saw something on TV about making something that floats out of the sheet.
As a matter of fact, one training I did, a guy said he was going to go to the Titanic's bar with several sheets. He's going to empty all the bottles in the bar and wrap them up in the sheets, and you have a big flotation device. One of his colleagues then pointed out that he did not specify how he was going to empty the bottles. He was just going to empty them. You can tell what he's probably implying there, right? But yeah, exactly. So you can tie things together. So logistics is all about the people and stuff that you need to get your task done. Planning. Planning is creating the timeline, right? So if we're doing a timeline here, can I use this? And I just had to turn the light out too, didn't I? I don't do this very often because I have terrible writing. But imagine basically here is bang. We hit the iceberg, right?
Are you okay on the light, Jay?
I'm okay. Are you guys okay? Am I distracting with my blonde hair? So 1 hour, 2 hour, 2.5 hours, the ship is going blub, blub, right? So here's your timeline. So call out some milestones that you want for our raft building. What are some things that we want to do and when do we want to have them happen? Say again? Got it. So you want that to happen probably sometime in the first hour easily, right? Yeah, get your teams assembled. Good. So teams are assembled. This is why you don't have me be the record keeper, by the way, because you can't read what I'm saying, but that's another story. All right, what else? Uh-huh. Yeah. You're going to have trouble reading anyway, but just kind of get the sense that you have this timeline here, and we're trying to decide what's going to happen when on the timeline.
You have to gather the materials to make the rafts.
Good. When do you want to have all this stuff gathered by, do you think? Yeah, again, by the end of the first hour at the latest, right? Maybe even earlier? Yeah. Okay, let's make that earlier then. So stuff. I'm just going to say stuff. So this says stuff. You can't read that because I have terrible writing, but that's what that says. Stuff, first hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, 2.5 hours. Anything else? Any other milestones?
I think you need to figure out the people who are going to build it. Like, who are those people?
Uh-huh.
And that needs to be established probably within the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. First 30 minutes, you want to have your teams established. Good, good, good.
Who's going to be on what boats?
Huh?
Who's going to be on what boats?
Who's going to be on what boats? So basically assign your passengers in the boats. And that could probably happen a bit later. When do you want the rafts to actually hit the water? 1 hour, 2 hour, 2.5 hours and the ship's going down?
2 hours.
2 hours. Why do you want that extra half hour? Load the passengers.
Get away from the boat
Why?
because it's going to suck everything back
Yeah. When the ship goes down, how many of you guys ever seen the TV show Mythbusters? So Mythbusters are these two guys that do science experiments. They're basically Hollywood guys. They actually took a small boat in Alameda Harbor, surrounded it with ping pong balls. They sunk the boat. The boat went down. The ping pong balls went down with it. So yeah, you want to make sure that you are away from the Titanic in your boats, I'd say at least a half an hour. So that's a fast introduction to planning, and I'm sorry that I have such bad writing. I'm going to give a slightly better method for doing that a little bit later on in one of our exercises.
You were talking about going back in time, so we have an idea that we've got 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times,
You
most
don't.
times, you will have no idea.
So I always,
Everything's going to happen right now.
yeah, exactly. I always approach this exercise as being a little bit of like my physics experiments in class. They always say assume a frictionless surface.
Okay.
So for this first one, we're trying to make a few variables out of there because you're exactly right. You know, a lot of times you really don't know what your timeline is. You don't actually have necessarily this highly established hard stop necessarily. And fire services especially are used to that. You know, when they've responded to the fire just recently, they have no idea how fast it's going to spread. You just have to deal with things as quickly as you can. So yeah, so this kind of thing you're doing as quickly as you can. So we're simplifying the exercise a bit by taking a few of the variables out, just so we can wrap our mind around some of the roles that ICS would have. It's a very good point, though. Yes?
I think the person who's gonna get into the lifeboats should know everybody's name on the ship, because if they make it, then they'll be able to tell who made it, who wasn't there. Some kind of description of what happened in their eyesight.
You're just describing the record keeping. Why would you want to do record keeping in a disaster? That's exactly one of the reasons why. Keeping track of survivors and people who were lost and as much documentation as you can as to what happened. Yes, sir?
You were talking about the sheet before, and I've been in one of your classes, so I'm kind of cheating, but
Uh-huh.
writing people's names down.
Yeah. Writing people. In fact, in my emergency kit, first off, I always have one of these in my pocket. I just find them handy. But this in a Sharpie marker, right? You guys could totally see how that would work out well, right? Cool. Okay? Titanic? Worked out well? Okay, it's 10 of. We basically had a little after 10. I don't know if you guys want to take a very short break, grab some snacks and coffee, and then we'll go on to the next couple exercises to wrap it up and all. Okay, let's take a short break. So you see that?
What the hell? Emergency preparedness drill. You know how it works. Once a quarter, keep our readiness up. Now, rise and shine, sleepyhead. Half the town is probably dead. I have to get a lock from my door. I think you'll like the drill tonight. I've tried to make it fun. Each of these cards contains a detailed scenario of a possible apocalyptic event. Everything from wildfires to a surprise invasion by Canada. Pick a catastrophe, any catastrophe. Sheldon, Canada is not going to invade California. Yeah, really? You think those hippies in Washington and Oregon can stop them? Fine. Alrighty. An 8.2 magnitude earthquake devastates Pasadena, reducing mighty edifices to dust, engulfing the city in flames. The streets flow with blood and echo with the cries of the wounded. Oh, excellent choice. Now, put on your hard hat and safety vest. Oh, fun. We just spent another night in front of our apartment dressed like one of the village people. You make that joke every 3 months. I still don't get it. Leonard, wait. What are you doing? I don't know. What am I doing? Look around you. There's hypothetical broken glass everywhere. Really? You're going to face Armageddon without your orthotics? Your choice. Uh-oh, hypothetical aftershock. And that's why we wear hard hats.
So that is. Hold on a second. I'm going to get out of the screen here. Back to the PowerPoint.
Just making a signal for us.
And I'll do a couple of backlights, I think. There we go. How's that look? Good. Okay. We like to call that couch potato preparedness. And the idea basically is having the conversation, framing the conversation around TV shows, books, you know, news incidents, you know, things like that. But kind of taking it perhaps a little bit more lighthearted. You can actually get some lessons from there. You know, so for example, you notice how Sheldon was stressing that Leonard should have something on his feet. And that's a good point to bring a factoid about the Northridge earthquake. most of the injuries of the Northridge earthquake that happened a while back happened to people's feet. You know, not having shoes on, broken glass. So you can actually bring a little factory like that up. The way you might do couch potato preparedness for the incident command system is we one time played a game where we tried to make our case for which characters on Star Trek would best fill certain roles in the incident command system. So I, for example, made the argument that Scotty would make a good, go ahead. Yeah, I'm being filmed, so basically, I guess they want to see me for some reason. I made the case that Scotty would be good for planning, because every time Captain Kirk told him, I need to finish this up now, he said, I gotta do that, Captain. You know, I need at least half an hour more. You know, there was an episode where Scotty appeared on Next Generation and got to speak to LaForge, you know, their engineer. He basically said, you know that, what I did was I basically always told the captain it actually took twice as long as we did it. That way you always have time to actually do it. And then you look at your hero. That's the whole point. You know. So planners, you know, planning, you know, that kind of thing. And it's kind of a fun exercise to do, and it makes it a lot more palatable, basically. I was explaining to somebody that the former executive director of CARD was a marketing person in days gone by. And she realized that the way that preparedness is usually, quote unquote, sold to people, presented to people, is in a very negative, scary way, which turns people away from that. Her point was you would never sell kind of food that way. You wouldn't put a bag on somebody's head and a label, right? You always extol the positive virtues. And that's what I actually want to get into next, because we now use Titanic, which probably counts as a legitimate disaster, kind of scary. But you know what? A lot of nonprofits have to raise money. A lot of nonprofits have to raise funds. And you can actually use the incident command system to help manage a fundraiser like a bake sale. So I'm going to ask you guys to do now is I'm going to ask you guys to help me discuss, the room's going to brainstorm and discuss all the ways we could use the various roles in the incident command system to manage a bake sale. So first off, what's the management going to do? What's the incident commander going to do for the bake sale?
Find a baker.
Coordinate the team. I heard somebody say find a baker. So they're the ones responsible to make it all happen. So I can do things like choosing the team and empowering the team leaders. So let me take that point right there for a minute. Would you be my logistics chief?
I don't know anything about logistics.
Oh, okay, no worries then. Okay, thank you. Would you be my logistics chief?
I'd love to know lots about logistics.
Awesome, thank you. So that worked out pretty well, right? Found some reason, I didn't know anything about it. So I heard from Sandy that there was this event that you guys did about a week ago, and you were in logistics. It was just absolutely fantastic. You knew exactly where everything was. Could you do that for me?
Yes.
Awesome. Did you notice a little bit more energy there? So I know this may seem kind of gushy and mushy. You know, in today's world, being a little bit mushy, being a little bit gushy might not be a bad thing. So not just choosing people to be members of your team, but to empower them. That can be a really, really important thing. So that's actually the quality you might want in the incident commander for your bake sale. We can do it. We got the best bake sale ever. You guys are fantastic, right? And then, of course, the signatory in the final, you know, take my Star Trek example again, because yes, I'm a nerd. Captain Picard says, make it so. Right? So the person basically says, make it happen, make it so. Safety and security for a bake sale. What's that going to be all about? Safety and security. Nobody steals the baked goods. Excellent.
Money box.
Money box. What else? Food handling, right? Proper food handling. Kitchens are hot, sharp places. And you have stuff that, you know, milk and dairy products should stay refrigerated, right? Cool. So safety event, making sure you got safe handling for your food. Stove's valuable safety, like the money box. Also, I like to put in the same category, making sure that things are labeled. In what way? Allergies, very good. I also can include maybe people need to know things are vegetarian or vegan or kosher or halal, right? Because you don't be eating a cookie, suddenly find out it's got nuts in it, or that it's got, I can't imagine a non-vegetarian cookie, but you get the idea. So, yeah, safety security can be really, really important for something like a bake sale. Liaison. So remember, liaison was the person that did the other agencies. So for kitchen fire guy, liaison was the fire department. So for a bake sale, your liaison is going to be on the shaking hands and talking to folks. What kind of liaison are you going to do for a bake sale? Health department, that's good, very good.
Salesforce.
Salesforce. They're building the tower after all. No, I'm too teasing, you get the. Anything else?
Some of them to make sure that they know that what's in the cookies, in case somebody's allergic.
Got it. So some ingredient coordination. And then somebody here was saying social media, but then she was starting to ask, is that more like public information? Which actually, yes, it is. So very good. That's why it happens all the time with liaison public information. It's kind of like, where's the line between the two? So you're going to be getting ingredients for your cookies and your baked goods, right? Where are they going to come from? Costco. So maybe your liaison will run a deal with Costco or Whole Foods. If you sponsor and give us some goods, make sure you're on the banner. That's the kind of thing liaison does, coordinating with other agencies. So think working with vendors and suppliers, neighboring booths, making sure the agreements are there. Talking to property owners, make sure it's okay to have a bake sale in the parking lot. I think somebody said this to the safety office. You also make sure you're not also blocking paths and things like that. Yes?
Maybe if there was permits or things that you needed to.
Bingo. That is exactly liaison. Exactly. That's the person that basically... In fact, I was actually part of a fundraising thing for CARD. And because we were named CARD, we held a poker tournament. And I ended up having to contact several different offices. It was very confusing initially because Office A had to have paperwork from Office B, and Office B had to have paperwork from Office A. Who comes first, chicken or the egg kind of thing? I finally talked to somebody who actually had done this before, and she said, yeah, first go B, then go A, then it'll work out. So they had contradictory requirements. Liaison and iron, that kind of stuff out. So troubleshoot issues with partners, things like that. Very good. Public information. Social media. So what kind of social media do you think for a big? Facebook and Twitter. And the reason I bring that up is because the way you post on Twitter is different than the way you post on Facebook, right? On Twitter, if you got, how many people are familiar with Twitter? I don't actually tweet pretty much ever, but I follow several agencies and people I like on Twitter. So I follow, for example, BART and various governments and Alameda County Fire Department, the City of Hayward, the City Hall, and I also follow Stephen Fry, because he does a TV show called Quite Interesting As Trivia. You know, things like, you know, little piece of trivia, factoids about, you know, animals and things like that. I did kick out of that. So I actually find out, in fact, I often find out that there's civil unrest, for example, by BART before I find it by anybody else. BART will say things like, 12th Street Station is closed due to police activity. Something's going on. And then a little bit later, I'll find out from the police department something's going on. So Twitter's very common. Twitter, you post a lot, like repeatedly. If you did it on Facebook, people would block you, right? Facebook, you have to be a little more stretched out in your calendar for that. What are other ways you might promote your bake sale? Flyers. Any other ways?
On your website?
On the website, very good. I didn't quite hear, sorry.
Oh,
Word, you know, no matter what else you do, word of mouth is always the number one method. Advertisers know this actually. Word of mouth is always the most important thing. Flyers, you know, radio spots, you know, whatever works for you. Social media is a big deal, obviously. So that's all the ways you can basically let people know. You do the traditional press release, you know, that kind of thing. Operations is the actual doing of stuff. What are you actually doing for a bake sale? You're baking. And? Selling and buying. Yeah, exactly, right? And what else does it involve? Set the tables. Very good. Got to bake sale up. And after the whole thing is done, you gotta clean up and take it down. So baking, selling, setting up, taking down, handling all that stuff in between. Very good. Logistics is what? 2 words, right? What were those 2 words for logistics?
People and stuff.
People and stuff, right? So what kind of people do you want for your bake sale?
Pleasant people.
Yeah, people like sweets, people know how to bake. I didn't quite hear.
Pleasant people.
Pleasant people, that's good. Yeah, pleasant. You know, that's a really good point, isn't it? People you can actually work with makes a big difference, doesn't it? Crabby bakers aren't as much fun. So,
People that can sell.
people that can sell, right? These cookies are fantastic. My daughter just can't get enough of these, right? Yeah, that kind of salesperson personality. Sales personality, right? Good. And what kind of stuff do you want? Tasty stuff. Very good. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, transportation also falls under logistics. That makes sense, right? Because you got to get the people and the stuff to where you need them to be. So transportation falls under logistics as well. Getting your volunteers, napkins, cash box, taking supplies, getting your volunteers to the work site, that kind of thing. Make sense?
We need some mock customers.
Mock customers. I like this.
Yeah, we had a bake sale, and we had our friends standing around, so it looks like a lot of people. Like, some
for some reason, when people see a lot of people buying it, then they come over.
It's kind of like whenever you see, she said mock customers. So customers are actually there looking. It's kind of like, when you really your hat out, if you're playing the guitar or playing the harmonica, you gotta have the money in there already.
Yeah.
Now, I just learned this like 3 weeks ago. Apparently there's a social media service where you can hire people to be your customers for something, for an event, and show up at your event.
It's too late for me to get onto that. We're having a garage sale tomorrow, so everybody can
Yeah, there you go. Show up for the garage sale.
just kind of hang out.
Yeah, it's
We'll
kind of
talk
hang out.
about today's class.
Kind of see if you think, this is good thinking, this is good thinking.
Okay, planning. Here is the other approach to planning that I promised you guys. I'm just going to kind of simulate this, rather than actually, I want to keep things moving at a pretty brisk pace for you all. There it is, I knew it was in here somewhere. What I have here, you guys all see this?
What have I got here? Sticky notes, right? So here is the sticky note approach to planning. What I do is I walk around and I hand out several sticky notes to everybody. You all get a sticky note, right? And then what I ask you to do is write down things that need to be on our timeline. Write down some milestones. What are things that we have to do to accomplish our bake sale? We do that for like maybe 5 or 10 or 15 minutes or what have you. I gather up the sticky notes and I stand up in front of a wall or a board. If I use this wall over here, would you all be able to see me? Yeah. Good. I know the light's a little dark here, but okay. This is, so virtual sticky notes, okay? Cloud-based sticky notes or something like that. What are some things that we need to do for our bake sale? To make our bake sale happen?
Develop the team.
Develop the team, good. That's probably happened pretty early, right? Left is early, good. What else?
You need to know how much you want to raise, how much money.
Got it, you guys set your goal for that, right?
How much you're gonna make.
How much you're gonna make, so you gotta do your financial planning and such, right?
You gotta have
What are
your
you gonna
baker.
sell?
Huh?
What are you gonna make?
Got it, so a lot of stuff happening, a lot of stuff so far is happening pretty early on still, right? Good. What else?
You gotta have bakers.
Gotta have bakers. Arrange that pretty early on, right? Buy your supplies. Now, buying your supplies, if this is going to be the actual bake sale, and this is going to be like 3 months prior to that, where do you want a supply buying to actually happen, do you think?
Well, non-perishables can happen right at the get-go, and then the baking stuff will happen towards the end.
I think we have a planner here. Non-perishable versus perishable. Very good. I think we have a planner here. What else?
Where are you gonna have it?
Where are you going to have the bake sale? Permits. When permits happen, right? And what you do is you slap all the stuff up on here, and then you start having discussions about where everything needs to happen. So you notice that the non-perishables were here, perishables were here. We have to discuss now things like, okay, picking our team. When do we actually have to pick our bakers versus picking our team? All right? Social, or your campaign for social media. You might have little various items for that, like how often things happen. The actual baking, so here's our hard stop. So again, this is another example where we actually aren't open-ended, like the artificial thing. I think this is less artificial. We actually know the baking is going to happen on this day, unless something else happens, of course. When do you want the actual baking to happen? Yeah, pretty close, right? I mean, unless you do a fruit cake. You basically want to make sure that baking actually happens right, because you want your goods to be nice and fresh. Nice, fresh, hot.
You might want to even do it early and make sure they turn out.
Yeah. Yeah, so the turnout's going to be like.
You know, test run.
So that's the post-it note approach to planning, is get your milestones on post-it notes, toss it up there, and then when you're done, whip out your handy electronic device, take a photo, or dictate. I don't know if people see me do this, but I often dictate notes when somebody wants me to follow up on something. My thumbs are pretty fast, but the dictation's gotten accurate enough, I can actually dictate it faster. So my former boss and I used to actually stand in front of a whiteboard, and we would just basically read the notes off, and then I'd clean up any misspellings or typos. And bingo, you have your plan. In a real pinch, when you're really strapped for time, you take a quick photograph and send the photograph off. Make sense? So set your date, timeline, create your theme, decorations, diversity. Maybe you can have entertainment or speakers, keep people entertained, talking about what great bakers and cookies you got, things like that. All right. Finance and admin for a bake sale. What are some of our considerations here? Budget.
How much does it cost and how much are we going to sell it for?
As a matter of fact, finance director for E9R, back when before I worked for E9R myself. He basically kind of leaned back and steepled his fingers like this and said, I will perform a cost-benefit analysis. Because he's a finance guy, that's how they talk. Basically, exactly like basically, how much is it going to cost, how much do you want to make, difference between the two, work out the budget for it, right? Now, first annual bake sale. First bake sale we've ever had. Hard or easy?
Hard.
Pretty difficult, right? Why?
The first time.
First time? All kinds of bumps, don't know how many people are going to show up. Like I was just talking to somebody about an event that was held back on September 9th. We had no idea when people were going to show up.
Not enough publicity.
Not enough publicity.
Not enough publicity.
You're not sure, I mean, exactly. Next bake sale, next year. Because?
You have a track.
History. And how do you remember that history? You kept records, because I mean, my memory is made of paper and silicon. It's on my iPhone, it's on my piece of paper here. In fact, I carry a moleskin with me to keep notes in sometimes.
What's paper?
Yeah, what's paper, exactly. Paper, what's that? Isn't that the thing you see on the cable? But, yeah, but my memory is made that way. That's how it works. To-do lists, things like that. That's how I remember. So a year later, how'd that go again? Yeah, right, we didn't have enough flyers. We didn't get enough people. I got the flyers out earlier. So you know all that stuff because you kept your records. Make sense? So that's how we did our bake sale. We're successful. So the point of this is that you can use the incident command system for something that's not a disaster. You can use this language and use this terminology. So when I get prepared for classes, I actually had a colleague. Her name was Victoria, and she was the queen of logistics. She was our logistics person. She was the person who basically packed and got all the materials ready for classes I would teach. So actually starting to use words like logistics and planning and public information, and actually making that terminology part of your everyday vocabulary, especially when you have to manage a project, can be a really useful thing. Now here is what we're going to do. I'm going to divide you guys into two teams. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I need a couple of people on this side of the room to please move over to that side of the room. I need a couple of volunteers to please shift to that side of the room. I'm just trying to balance you guys a little bit more. Great. Say hello. Hi. Yay. Good. All right. Okay, so now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. Good. That looks more balanced. I like that. And I want to make sure you're part of the team.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah, good. So do you want to move up, or do people move back to you? What's easiest?
I can move up.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So here's what we're going to do. Now you guys kind of have your teams established. I want you guys to try to establish an incident command system team in about 5 minutes. I might give you 7. We'll see. You can only pick people who are in your group. So if you look across the room and see somebody you wish was on your team, too bad, they're not here. Why do you think that's an important point? Yeah, I might not say stuck with, but you have who you have, right? You have the people that you have. So the very first training I saw, my former boss flew the executive director off to Hawaii because she knew that this particular group would always look to their executive director for the leadership role, and she wanted to make sure they could function in her absence. So you want people, you've got the people you got. That's what this is all about here, right? In each team, please pick somebody to be your spokesperson and somebody to be your recorder. It could be the same person, or it could be 2 different people. Okay? The recorder can just use a regular sheet of paper, or the recorder can use this chart. That's why we have this chart, because it's available as a tool. Now, the spokesperson at the end of the 5 or 7 minutes is going to stand up and basically is going to talk about your decision-making process. How did you pick? How did you decide who you wanted to have? Why? What skills were you looking for in each role? So who was your safety officer and why? And how did you get that decision? Who was your logistics chief and why? How did you get that decision? You don't have to have a scenario. You can just totally abstract. In fact, when I first did these trainings, it was totally abstract. People just basically kind of look at each other's skill sets and decide, you'd be good logistics, you'd be good planning, right? But some people want to have a scenario to put this around. So for example, I just for a food bank once, and you decided it was a zombie attack. And their safety officer, by the way, was awesome. Their safety officer knew exactly where, okay, so they could get up there and get through the scenes. They're going to block that off. So their safety officer is really aware of all the different ways the zombies could get in. So it could be a zombie attack, it can be a fundraiser, it can be a birthday party, it can be a wedding, it can be a festive, staff or volunteer appreciation day, it can be any of that kind of stuff. Okay? So, Any questions about that? Are you guys in positions where you can kind of get together and help now? Because a couple of you guys are kind of far away, so you might need to call across the room or stand up. All right? Okay. And I'm going to have you guys start your 5 minutes starting now. Please begin. And I'll be here to ask any questions you might have. Answer any questions you might have.
Possibly present. Something about the person's already done. This is what they do like that.
Okay.
Have the skills and then also.
Can you take those and present?
Skills that you have to sort of deal with in a event or in a disaster. Everybody's kind of, she's gonna need finance or whatever, so it might be what everybody's best at doing. Ask everybody's best at doing.
Yes. Well, that's why I was asking.
Do what? Take some notes. I can, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I don't want to present it. You know why?
Do we want an actual scenario?
It's for a set of
Earthquake, would that be more helpful?
Children's Carnival at Urban Auditorium. So it's a children's event, and it's to raise funds for help families with child care referrals. So the idea is it's a carnival, so fun, and the kinds of things that we need to have there are like carnival acts, concessions, entertaining, so entertainment, some activities, food.
So have you,
Yeah, we have ourselves in this part already. Yeah, we should raise money for gap care for children. It was like unrestricted funding.
I mean, and if we want to use a really easy scenario, just make some scenario.
Okay. Anybody ever got with social media?
What our strengths are.
Two ways to approach. One is it actually, how would you, how would we do anything? And then the other one to people, you get a further, and then who has that experience being a maybe kind of thing that one to post or you want to make that all? Okay. And I don't know. Step one guy.
So you're,
Alex.
So you're going to work with media, distribute messages.
Your headphones on, you Alex?
Okay. Cool. So you're public information. And what is
Yeah, just roll through. We could always cut it.
I didn't cut yet.
Yeah, we'll edit. As long as you're good on battery, right?
We're okay.
Just in case he starts up again.
Yeah, exactly. We'll splice it in post. Right. We go for lunch, dude. You want to eat out here, or you want to go back toward Livermore? Are you hungry now, or do you want to wait till we get back toward?
I'll wait till we get back.
How are we going to put together?
I want to make sure we don't include that way.
Huh?
Yeah, I want to make sure we don't
Yeah.
that way I know for sure, like, okay.
Well, they might have stores around here if you want to look. If you're hungry, just think about it. Let me know.
Do you think you can do it right now?
Not right now, but I'm saying we don't have to drive to Livermore. We could just get lunch right after we wrap here.
Yeah, we can do this. Looks like
Yeah, let's just bail. Just take off. We're done.
We put like little dummies.
Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Hey Chris, can we test out your steel toes? Can we drop something heavy on your foot? Like a desk.
I'm a pro construction camera operator.
You're a construction operator?
Yeah.
2 jobs in one?
Bill says and the camera.
Well, when you start doing prop design, those are the shoes you want, right? All your woodworking and all that cool stuff.
So there is a plan for planning and operation.
It's kind of nice not to have to go into the city. It's just easier, you know. Parking is nice. Less people.
Oakland is 9
Yeah. Most big cities are like that.
It's like just it's a great city.
If you're downtown, yeah. You gotta watch the people around you. You don't want to be around anybody shady.
Is that something that you would do?
I didn't have a chance to respond to it. Well, I don't know.
So we've got liaison type experience and like working with the community. I can tell
Well, we have to deal, I step out. I do have experience working on management. I'm going to go ahead and call it now, folks. That's really good. Thank you. I know you're up because you guys seem to be in really good discussions and really detailed. So this is about 11 minutes. Just so you guys know, it's about 11 minutes, which is very good. I mean, the fastest I ever saw this happen, the fastest I ever saw this happen was I did this training once for DACARA, which is the Deaf Counseling Advocacy and Referral Agency. And it was really fascinating because I had to work through a course through an ASL interpreter, which meant I had to be a little more careful about how many words I used. And as you notice, I have a tendency to speak quickly when I get excited, so they had to keep reminding me to slow down because fingers are fire. But when it came time for them to pick the teams, we had 2 groups, and they stood in 2 circles, so they could all see each other and did an incredibly rapid sequence of American Sign Language. And I'm fascinated by languages anyway. How many people do you speak a language other than English? Jag kan bara svenska, men inte så mycket. I speak a little bit Swedish. But I'm fascinated by languages, and American Sign Language seems to be very efficient because they basically have their teams done in like 5.5 minutes. And part of it is you can do terms on the fly, so apparently negotiate some terms for things they didn't actually have signs for. So I just find it really fascinating. So, and by the way, somebody asked a question, the point of this exercise, maybe I should add that to the slide, is you're just trying to pick the team. You don't actually have to make a plan. You don't actually have to actually respond to the incident. I just found out that some folks had trouble doing this exercise without having a concrete scenario to hang their hat on. It's like they have, that's the only reason, and that's why I stress that the scenario is optional. Back when I first did these, people just basically picked team based on skill sets. I also overheard a fascinating comment, which I want to give credit to. I overheard somebody talk about, so we just take people's word for their skills? It's kind of like, yeah, you kind of do. I mean, you kind of have to. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? Now, you may notice there's room for alternates, and there's also the whole idea of we're trying to make this flexible. If somebody has to stand down from their role, know that you can hand it over to somebody else. In fact, really the whole point of this exercise, I think, is because back in the early days of disaster preparedness, people had a tendency to make overly detailed plans. In fact, it's another comment I want to acknowledge, that are so detailed that in an actual emergency, you couldn't possibly read it and actually know what you're keeping track of. You can't possibly keep track of it. In an actual emergency, in the actual response phase, you just got to know the status of things and what's going on in as succinct a way as you possibly can. And you're not going to get down into huge levels of details until later on, maybe, in the recovery phase. You're trying to put things back together.
Then people have more time to sit around and not talk about nitty-gritty details. But in an actual response, you gotta be pretty fast and mobile and fluid and flexible. And a lot of people's plans try to predetermine the roles. I'll be incident commander, you'll be safety officer, you'll be operations, you'll be, and then the disaster happens and none of us are here, right? Yeah, the world does not work like that, exactly. Holy Names University at one point had a person walk on campus with a bow and arrow. And had to go lockdown. And 7 of the 9 people in the safety committee were off campus at the time. The head of the safety committee, in fact, she basically pulled up to the foot of the hill and then got out of her car, and from the foot of her car, talked to neighboring Mills College, who then activated their center, rolled out maps, gave her information, because they had a whole agreement going on there. So basically, that's agencies cooperating. And she was able to do rapid response. The whole thing was fantastic. It took a while before they could actually find the person with the bow, but they had some middle school kids on campus that were kept completely safe in the gymnasium, doing some very quiet games, so they could stay occupied. It ended up being a really brilliant response. And it happened while 7 of the 9 people of the safety committee were not on campus. And that's kind of the point here, is that you guys can do it too. So, okay, so I don't know if you're taking notes, but I had to, if you see me right over my keyboard, just to emphasize the note, that'd be good to have. So, first off, before I actually ask for actual debriefs, how to go? Yeah, I was telling Sandy that if I could figure out a way to strip the other stuff out and have it just be this, to me, this right here is the heart of the training, the heart and the soul of the training. This is what it's all about, is actually getting around. It's just that in order to be able to do this, you kind of have to go through a couple of exercises first. And we're going to do one more exercise after this before you wrap it all up. We're making really good time. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I found in the exercise, everybody sitting here could be a first responder.
Yeah.
I felt great confidence in the fact that everybody here, something I could take the role as first responder person in any situation.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that over there? Yeah. Anybody can take on the role of first responder, and in fact, can I borrow this for a second? Anybody can take on any of these roles. I've had trainings where they get to finance chief, for example, and this group looks longingly over at the other group where the chief financial officer is sitting, wishing they had her over in their group, because that guy, who's going to be our finance person? Well, you don't have to have your finance chief be the finance person. I can do it by making notes, as bad as my writing is, and stuffing notes in an envelope to get processed later. But actually, one of my favorite tricks is just dictate. I just dictate stuff. In fact, I dictated a note while you guys were doing this. I just talked to my phone, took a look at it. Yep, it's spelled properly. So technology makes things so much easier for that kind of thing too. It's a real confidence builder, isn't it? Yeah.
I felt
Good.
good.
Okay. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's start with this group. With the spokesperson, please stand up. You have a spokesperson, you have a recorder, might be the same person.
Recorder.
Okay. See how fluid it is? You can totally change it, right? Good. Now, what I'd like to have happen, first up, how well do you guys know each other in this group? You're all pretty much not, you're kind of strangers, right?
For about an hour.
Oh, yeah, for about an hour. Great. And that's sometimes my favorite, because in a total group of more or less strangers gets to work together. So what I'd like to have happen here, since a lot of you folks don't know each other, is as he calls off a name, please acknowledge who you are. Let everybody else know. You can stand up or at least raise your hand like, oh, And if you need to interject something, please go ahead. Sometimes a spokesperson is all talking. Sometimes the people will talk for themselves. Hi, I'm the safety officer because I'm also, so feel free to go your way, okay? Please start. Go ahead.
Okay, so we went around the group and we asked for volunteers for the different positions that we were in. Seeking information from each other because who would feel comfortable doing which pieces. So I'm going to start with our incident commander and allow him to introduce himself here.
Howdy, Hamlet.
So our scenario is we had to do a scenario basically because exactly like you said, it's hard to wrap our minds around our pieces without some kind of something to grab onto. So from there, because he was kind of leading the discussion initially, he, in a sense, took the role of the incident commander. So from there, we went around the group to find the public information officer, which is Edna. She volunteered to be the public information officer because she had some experience with the PIO. Safety officer was Tess. I became the liaison officer. operations chief, Jordan? Jordan. And then our planning team, we actually had one regular planning and then an alternative, which was Elise. And Al was our alternate. Charles became our logistics. And Angela, sorry, was our finance and records.
I'd like to say something, when they were calling off the names about who's gonna be what, and I just happened to be writing the names, and then somebody said, well, you can be the, you can be the person. So it kind of, you can kind of pick people as you're talking to them, you kind of see what roles they'll be good at.
Yeah, who's also found too. And you know, who's calm.
But exactly like you said, I would imagine, given a few more minutes, we could go around this group and the roles could interchange and we could cross-train as well, because we could easily adapt to any of these with just a few minutes training with a simple scenario.
Yeah.
And also what's true is, Hani, when we suggested that he be the incident commander, he said, no, those could be deceiving, but about 2 minutes later, he's like, so what are we gonna do? You know, I told you. Sometimes people just need to step in that role, they're, you know, trying to hold back because they don't wanna appear like they know everything, but sometimes you just gotta go on there and put those skills to work, so we saw that he was the right person for the job.
The slightly reluctant leader, huh? Yeah.
And he was really calm too.
Yes.
So in an earthquake, it was sort of like, all right, well, this is what we're gonna have to do. Really calm voice and calm demeanor.
Good, so that just answered actually exactly what I was going to ask you guys to talk about briefly for the other roles, which is what are you looking for in your incident commander? Calm demeanor.
Yeah,
That's
with
very-
confidence,
with
because too
confidence.
calm could be a little alarming.
Yeah, you don't want to be so calm that you don't think they don't care. Yeah, right, that's true, that's certainly true, yeah. Kind of like, oh, whoa, you don't want that, yeah. So for some of the other roles, and I think you also mentioned like you were taking notes, and thus you became a note taker. And by the way, the first person to speak up often does end up becoming the incident commander, just so you know. Just saying. First person to speak up, yeah. Kind of like, oh, wow, we just had an earthquake. I think we should, okay, you're in charge. Because, you know, you're the person that kind of is the first person to speak up. So just be aware, and don't use it to hesitate to speak, just have the confidence. Yes?
I was going to say, sometimes when you keep listening, though, you realize that person shouldn't be incident.
That is correct.
You know,
That's correct.
Then, you know, somewhere in the conversation, I start leaning toward both of them,
Right.
you know, playing it.
If we just had an earthquake and I say, all run for the doorway, you know, because you guys know that, right? Doorways are not the thing to do in earthquakes. Right? What do you do in earthquakes? Yeah, drop, cover, and hold on. Great shakeouts happening late October. It's a drop, cover, and hold on. You still hit the doorway thing once in a while, but keep in mind, how many doorways in this room?
2.
How many people are in this room? Yeah, relevant fit. Plus, doorways swing open and shut.
That won't get me outside though.
That'll take you outside. But don't go outside while my little joke is that while the earth is moving, you shouldn't be. Right? So now, that being said, if I get to the ground, I suddenly realize, oh, I don't want to be near that thing. Then stay down and move away as best you can. And then, you know, if I can't be that mobile, if I can't move, then I just want to try to do my best to cover up. Sometimes if I see somebody nearby that I want to protect, I might throw my jacket over them and encourage them to cover up. You know, you do what you can. I mean, some folks who are seniors, for example, cannot throw themselves down to the ground and then expect to get back up again. I'm sort of approaching that point, I'm sorry to say. Yeah. So,
But, you know, and watching what's been going on, if you have a disability or you're up in age, look like over 60, those people were the ones that were last to get picked up and taken out. I'm taking a lot of training, and they sort of, in the military sort of does it like that. If you are not able to, like for instance, move the debris and stuff like that, you gotta have something that they leave you. That's a fact.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why it's necessary to have a plan, whether it's at your job, whether it's at your home, your church, or whatever. What would you do if something happened? Who would you contact to be there for you? Or would you actually, after you left, and knowing that, not of experience, then I'm training my kids to that.
Yeah.
If, you know, they're grown, and if something comes down to it, you have to take care of your families and they're younger and do that. But it's a sobering thing.
it's a sobering thing, and slight digression, but related to this, you know, I used to work for CARD, as you know, and we were in a 4th-story office, and the assistant to our executive director had cerebral palsy, so she knew by using wrist crutches, which meant that, and it drives me crazy, frankly, because the official advice, if you're mobility impaired, is go to the top of the nearest stairwell and wait. because you can't take the elevator. Yeah, I don't think so. We're not going to be leaving Marianne behind because she can't go down the stairs. So what we did was we made sure, now Marianne was fairly petite, so in a real pinch I could just pick her up and carry her because she was only pretty petite. But we also had in our office, we had an evacuation sling. And the evacuation sling was basically not too expensive. Evacuation chairs, unfortunately, are really expensive, but there's ways you can get those. But the evacuation slings are relatively cheap. It's a large canvas sling with up to 8 handles. So you get 4 people involved in carrying. So we could toss Marianne and carry her down. We are not leaving Marianne behind. So.
There's an incident that happened at the women's shelter. Somebody said they're going to go farm. On the 2nd floor, there was a lady there who had cerebral palsy. Well, everybody else could get out when they ran out or whatever, so I had to put her on my back, you know, so she couldn't walk too good. So to come down that first flight of stairs, she just had to hold on to my back as we got down there, and then down to the when we got down to the bottom floor, then everybody else began to help her with a chair, a regular chair, right? Because she had some different to get down the shadow. But nobody had an opportunity to think about, what do we do?
That's why a little bit of pre-thought can make such a big difference. Somebody here talked about making sure that you knew your neighborhood. And this is actually something that when you guys leave here, look around your neighborhood. Are there any seniors who might not be able to take care of themselves? Or might need a little bit of assistance. I mean, seniors should be doing periodic check-ins anyway. My favorite training I did about 5 years ago was at a senior center. And 3 of the people at that senior center were from the Hawaiian Islands. One Maui, one Oahu, one the Big Island. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this word, but there's a word they use in Hawaii. That word is ohana. You guys heard that word? Ohana is usually roughly translated as family. You guys know the movie Lilo and Stitch, the Disney movie? It's a movie about a little alien who's trapped. He basically is trying to escape. He has nobody, he's all alone. He lands in Hawaii, a little girl named Lilo takes care of him. And she tells Stitch that ohana means nobody is left behind, nobody is forgotten. So ohana translates as family, but family in Hawaii is not your blood relatives, just your blood relatives. Family is auntie up the street and uncle around the corner. So, and they came to the conclusion, partly through training, once that you just realize preparedness is all about ohana. It's all about that sense of family. So that whole build that sense up. So thank you for bringing that up. So kind of segueing into that though. So calm, but maybe not too calm. And a person who actually comes up with good ideas. What are some of the other qualities from your other roles, like financial or safety? What were some things, or how did you end up picking who you picked for safety officer, for example?
Process of elimination at this point.
Yeah.
Basically, when you're looking to fill the roles, you're looking for somebody with experience in those areas. Safety and those are pretty simple roles to fill. Each of these roles are pretty simple roles to fill. But when it comes right down to it, we had a need and we had a person left, so he was willing to take on the role.
Got it.
One of the other reasons why, when you said you wanted to be finance, is because as women we buy a lot of stuff and we have to do a lot of stuff with kids and everything, and I felt confident that if you had to be in control of the money to buy whatever services we might have needed from somebody to help us wherever we were at or food or whatever, I know you would know how to budget our money.
I was also a teller at one time.
Okay, yeah, that's good too.
So again, your everyday readiness becomes your disaster resilience, right? Skills that you have. I mean, my elementary school teacher example, right? And by the way, this also kind of ties into job titles. Sometimes you might think that your finance person is automatically going to be the finance chief. But I've seen several cases where the finance person becomes a planner because it's a similar skill set. Similarly, a lot of people may assume the executive director of your nonprofit might become the incident commander. Might actually become your public information officer. And the incident commander might actually be the, whatever the job title is, in charge of operations, right? That kind of thing. You kind of have to see how it fits best for you. That's why in these workbooks, which I'm not focusing on this too much, that's going to be your takeaway. Notice there's a lot of blank pages in those workbooks. That's your tool to take back and customize for you. Guys, anything else you want to mention?
I just want to say he's an excellent spokesperson, I think.
Yes! Yay! Let's do some big hands. Well done. Okay. Yeah, thank you. That was a slight digression. It's an important digression. I always like these things to roll on than they do. So, all right. By no means least, team number 2. Who is your spokesperson?
I am.
Please stand up. And same thing, so basically describe, you know, who you picked. Please acknowledge when you or your name is mentioned, and then talk a little bit about either the why or the how or both.
Okay, so we, I thought we were copacetic, just like that. You know, everybody, knew what their, opportunities that we have to deal with in the beginning, you know, who's. So we, our commander is Jim, and.
I spoke up first.
You know, management is very important, and we, just the way we connected with each other, it's like, right away, we had someone that is putting the opportunities, who's gonna do what, and all that sort of stuff. And she, did that for us. I'm one of those people that connect with governments, and I do a lot of outreach, so I wanted to make sure that we have that communication right there so that we can navigate right as to it. And then each person really just, you say, oh, I do this and I'll do that, and it just came copacetic, you know, it was really good. So, let me do that. So our commander is Jim. Public relation is Waka. I am. Safety is Rosie. Liaison is Lynn. So you can tell I can. I wanted to make sure that everybody talks, so I didn't put the names on it right away. Operation and planning is Terry. Logistics is Queen. And finance is Cecilia. So, what else do I have to say?
So why don't you pick one specific example of a person who felt, because it sounds like you basically, people rather leapt into certain roles. Like you said, it's very compensating. Give one really concrete example of one role that got filled very quickly and how it happened.
I spoke up.
You spoke up first.
Something that I started to do when we sat down and you look at the roles that need to be filled, does anybody have any experience with this?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody will either sheepishly say something or will stand up and say, yeah, I've worked with that.
Mm-hmm.
We get down to the point at the end where people don't necessarily feel confident with the position or doing the position. But something I've learned in management is collectively, we have all the knowledge to get this done. And there's no reason that if I have an idea, because if anybody else, because I happen to be the manager, I'm supposed to share all my ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has an idea, they can't work with finance to let them know, hey, I was thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the finance person's job then to make that decision and say, yes, that's good, or no, I'm headed in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
But collectively, we can make it through all this, no
Mm-hmm.
problem. So the first idea or the thought that I had was, does anybody have any experience in this? And when people would raise their hand, you're that. If you have problems with it, we can help you.
Yeah.
But we need somebody there.
That is nice. Yeah, actually, I agree.
I think we also found that a lot of people had experience in a lot of areas. We could have easily picked up any one of those roles, and it was really a matter of who felt like this feels like a comfortable niche for me, you know, to try to let them shine in that area, if that's what they felt was comfortable with.
A lot of them cross over. A lot of these
Yes.
titles do a lot of the similar stuff.
Yeah, that's one reason why I often make the point I do about the difference between liaison and public information is all the roles. Those are the two that are a little more a man for us, especially with similar skill sets.
We actually changed one in the middle because it was like, okay, yeah, I can do that along the way. Somebody else is like, I don't have a position yet. Oh, well, that would work perfect too because of your finance. You move things around, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, oh, totally okay, yeah. Great, nice. Now, Did anybody, I'm not too worried about whether you did or you didn't, did anybody pick a scenario and did it influence things in any way?
We did.
Okay,
We used, my organization's doing a carnival for children,
nice,
so we used that as a
great.
fundraising carnival.
And was that helpful or was it necessary, do you think, or did it? I'm just always curious
Maybe
because.
it necessary, but it just gave us the first thing. to-
Did the first thing, okay, good. Because when I first did these, like the first dozen or so trainings, the idea of giving a scenario for this exercise wasn't part of the equation, and then one group was just really stuck. So I said, well, why don't you mention you're doing something? And I've added it ever since because it's been so helpful. So how about you guys? You guys have a earthquake? Yeah, earthquake school. Okay, great, awesome. Good.
After everybody already had their roles.
Had the rolls, yeah. Yeah, get the rolls first, then start getting into things. Good, okay. Let me see if I can get my notes to come over. I was trying to do that. That was nice, folks. Really well done.
That actually brings up an interesting point, because
Yes.
ours was an event that's coming up, which is going to be a totally different liaison or spokesperson than an earthquake or an emergency happening, and now you need to deal with the public. It makes a big difference who you call to be in those positions or who you ask to be in those positions.
Yeah, the scenario might actually differ things. It might make things different, but it mightn't. And my notes did come over, so there we go. Okay, so I might actually make all of this a little bit smaller so it fits. Is that too small?
Yeah.
It is too small?
Yes.
Let's make it bigger then. How's that? Maybe I'll kill the lights a little bit too. So just to sort of reiterate what we discussed here a little bit, what came up with, I took notes. So a lot of you guys found,
Just for now.
all right, all. I forgot that my clicker actually will sometimes do this, so I'll just use my old-fashioned fingers. So it's a confidence builder. In one group, you guys ask for volunteers. The person becomes the incident commander, sometimes the first person to speak. Sometimes you can see just the active discussion, which people might be most better specific for certain roles. We did a slight digression talking about, knowing your community, your neighborhood, the whole aha. And then some roles, sometimes it's process elimination. You pick certain roles and people who are left end up being the remaining roles. The other group was very copacetic. I know I misspelled that, but you can move the clicker quickly. And people rather leapt into certain roles by asking the questions that we have experience with. People say, yeah, I got some experience with that, and that would come up. And then I think this is a really important point right here. You can change things in the middle. Collectively, we all have the knowledge we can do this. And again, stressing the fact that there's lots of crossover. Anybody can take on any of these roles. Now, one of the things I'm going to try to make available to you guys, I know that if you left your email address with Sandy on the sign-in sheet, I'm going to be emailing you guys a PDF of the presentation. And I'm also going to be trying to point you guys or emailing you guys some tools that you can use. I don't know if you guys ever had insomnia and ever would watch late night TV and see the ads for this thing. They called it the Wonder File. It's like your portable desktop. And my former boss, Anna Marie Jones, had the idea of how this could be a completely brilliant thing for the incident command system. So I'll have two things back so you can actually, it looks better if I do that. The Incident Command System Wonder File. One of my happiest moments is when I showed this to a firefighter. And remember, it's starting the fire services. ICS of Firefighters Concept. He said, that is so cool. I can do ICS off the trunk of my car. So it's got some of the handouts that you guys have. It's got the booklet you guys have. It has some other tools. That marker and sticky notes. What is it called again? It's called a Wonder File. And sadly, they don't make them anymore. But I showed this to somebody. These are shown on late night TV. I mean, if you do a Google on Wonder File, you might be able to locate this. I'll put that up on the screen in just a second. But I mean, somebody who's a seamstress said making a bag, like a small bag like this, would be really easy to do. But here is the nutshell of the whole thing. What I have here is a clipboard. What do you notice about this clipboard? It's got strings on it. Good.
Name tags.
Name tags, exactly. And it's thin. It's a thin clipboard. It has checklists, because checklists are awesome. It has brightly colored signage. One of my favorite stories was the Napa Valley Volunteer Center and logistics, where a young man named Noel, they'd had some floods up in Napa, and a young man named Noel was the logistics chief. People would show up and he'd basically say, hi, my name is Noel, I'm logistics. I'm people and stuff. If you need people, or you need stuff, please come talk to me. The awesome part about that was that Noel was the 10-year-old son of one of the staff members. And he did logistics. In fact, as a matter of fact, his mom actually saw the presentation, you're forgetting one detail when Anna Marie told the story. He actually hadn't broken his list yet, so he said, "Hi, my name is Noel, I'm logistics." So it was absolutely awesome. And you guys saw the name tags. That's why I like, because when you guys are talking about how you could switch roles midway through, you just basically switch name tags. So what I have right here basically says, management, incident commander. What does the IC, what does the incident commander do? I can't remember. Would you please clearly read the first thing you see in the back there? First.
You are in charge.
You are in charge! And it's got a little checklist of the things that you would do. And you would customize this for your agency. You basically customize for your facility, because it might differ a little bit based on the situation as you're talking about. You also might customize based on the scenario, because logistics are very different, right? So I'll be holding you guys to these tools, or have them as attachments. And if you guys don't get an email with some attachments from me in like the next 5 days, please let me know, because I have occasionally been having some issues with emails with attachments not wanting to get through. So let me or Sandy know, and then we'll be able to get that to you. Oh, I promised you this. Hello. So it was called a Wonder File. Just FYI. So, all right, I want to go ahead and wrap things up because you guys did an awesome job at that. I really want to do, in fact, I'd like you guys to actually do me a favor, and please, everybody give yourselves a great big hand. So just to kind of seal the deal, I want to do one more quick exercise, like we did for the bake sale, but this time we're going to do a grant proposal. This is actually based on a true life story, where Incident Command System was used as a project management tool to get money. Okay? So here's the scenario. Bill and Melinda Gates, the Gates Foundation, is going to give us $1 million to do a grant proposal. It's due in 24 hours. So by this time, by noon tomorrow, we've got to be clicking send on the website. Because of course, it's electronic submission. I mean, Bill Gates, right? So Bill and Melinda Gates. Okay? First question I have before we get started. Can we do it?
Yes.
That's what you want to hear. If you have anybody who goes like, oh, I don't know, basically shake their hand very politely and try to find a solution for them. Because if you do a 24-hour grant submission, you want to be really committed to being able to do this. I like to call this like realistic optimism. You know, optimism is all about, oh, it's all happy. Optimism is like this realistic, it's going to be growing up in Alaska again. You know, you can't go into a scenario in Alaska when things are going bad, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. You got to go into the attitude that you're going to make it. Sports teams are like that too. You have to have that thinking you're going to make it. You're not being unrealistic, you're just being optimistic in a realistic way. All right. Incident commander for the grant proposal. What's the incident commander going to do? Make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, keeping people on point and on task. Because we've got a kind of limit timeline here, right? Again, set your tone and style. What direction is it going to be going in? Empowerment. That's going to be really, really important here. And of course, this is probably the person who might need to be the signatory for this. So that may have some control over who this person has to be, depending on how your organization is set up. Safety and security for a grant proposal. What kind of safety? Making sure it meets standards. Very good. I heard back. Oh, I didn't quite see what that was. Making sure it meets standards. That's important. What else?
That nobody gives up the information what you're trying to get.
Yeah, there you go. Confidentiality of information. But, I mean, even if you're a nonprofit, some things you still have to be very careful about. Now, if we're going to be doing a 24-hour submission, we're probably going to be in this location then. So at 2 a.m., if I decide to go out for a cup of coffee, concerns, no concerns? I don't know. I actually don't know. What is it like here at 2 a.m.? Dark. Yeah. So, you know, safety issues, late hours, and familiar locations. I know where our office is located in Hayward. We're near City Hall. I don't know why it is, but anytime you're near City Hall, the neighborhood is just interesting people hanging around City Hall at 2 a.m. So you want to be, it's just the reality of it. As long as they were. Say again? You're also by Bart. Also by Bart, yeah. Yeah, you know, Bart used to always feel safe around. Now not so much. Yeah, it's really, I worry about my wife and daughter being in Bart every day in San Francisco. I get a little concerned. So confidentiality, safety, and you know what? Stress management, right? You might be going, oh my God, it's only like 6 hours left, you know, calm down. Very common focus. In fact, you actually notice that in the posters, it says make your best decisions, remain calm and focused. Liaison. Remember, that's the other agencies. Kitchen and Fire Carriers, Fire Department. So for a grant proposal, who might you be liaisoning with? Finance departments. Good.
Proposal requirements?
Proposal requirements. You may have to actually find out what the requirements are going to be. All right? Keeping partners involved in updating on progress and needs. Co-applicants. Some grants you may have a better chance if you co-apply with somebody rather than trying to do it all yourself. And it totally depends on what this is. It may or may not be appropriate. Public information. That's an interesting one. Public information for grant proposal. Let's broaden that a bit. So let's think of public information before, during, and after. Might be a little bit different, right? So what kind of public information things might you have for a grant proposal?
I think your public information in the beginning is amongst your community, whoever you're working with, your team.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, it would be really almost on the verge of being liaison, in fact, right? Yeah. Whereas later on, you might want to say that, hey, guess what? We applied for this thing. We didn't get it, but it was an honor to be nominated, kind of thing, right?
Right.
Or if you did get it, that's actually something you want to really kind of promote and know about. In fact, the bookmarks that act as my business cards point out that my funding for doing what I'm doing today comes from the Walter and Lise Haas Fund. So we're very, very much making sure the public realizes who's funding my efforts to reach out to the community and do what I'm doing right now, and more besides.
Would you also, with public information, if you got a grant that was going to affect people in the community, you'd want to get that out there, right?
I think so.
To get your clients to come in.
I've found as I get to this point for many different trainings I've done, it really depends on the agency in question and what they're thinking the grant might be. Food banks would go in one direction, advocacy groups may go in another direction, but yeah.
Well, we got some grant money, just immediate grant money for foster care, stopgap child care. So we needed to get out that we need to enroll, 50 families immediately. So you have to get that out some way through your communications.
Very good. Very good. So maybe you need some help in accomplishing your deliverables. You got this grant to do these wonderful things. Help us do these wonderful things, folks. Right. Yeah. Very good. Nice. Okay, operations for a grant proposal. Remember, operations is the doing of the stuff. Who's doing the typing? I've had this happen twice now. Once a long time ago, the Asian Community Mental Health Services, and once just recently. And here's how they answered the question. I love that. Because it says everything you need to know without even using any words, right? Yeah, who's doing the typing, right? Creating your outline, creating your drafts, doing reviews, that whole thing. The actual doing of the grant proposal. Crunching numbers in spreadsheets, find your Excel experts. The actual doing that stuff is actually doing all the typing and number crunching and assembling, review, and editing. Logistics, people and stuff. What kind of people, what kind of stuff might you need for a 24-hour submission? Food, very good. What kind of food? What kind of food? Pizza. See, IT people, pizza and Jolt Cola, right? Silicon Valley.
Wow, does Jolt still exist?
I'm not making that up. I just Starbucks. Mountain Dew. And we're here, Department of Public Health, so we should definitely, first, carrots and radishes. I can live forever on my radishes. I just love that little tangy taste of them, and the nice sharp crunch of the veg. My bottles and bottles of water. I'm a big water drinker, actually. I love coffee, but I also am a big water drinker. So making sure you have stuff like that, right?
Will
Yes.
Will your people also be the people that are going to contribute to the grant? The information?
Could be.
Your partners in the grant process?
Yep. So your liaison might arrange for that, and then once they're in, the logistics pulls those people in to actually do their tasks. Now, if we have to pull people away to work on this grant, your agency might need to get some temps, right? Get some people to fill for our desk and such. So refreshments, temp up for staffing, finding more meeting space. I did it myself when I first did these trainings. I used to say, you might want floppies. Yeah, right. Who uses floppies anymore? Nice paper, copiers, all that you're doing stuff. Now, because it's electronic submission, maybe not so much, we still might need to have regular paper for printing drafts, because as I do a computer, every now and then, I need a sheet of paper and a blue pen. It's just funny how your mind works sometimes, right?
the logistics person may take, if you have several people working on it, you should have them bring in submissions from other people to the person doing the entry.
Did you guys catch that? Bringing in other submissions of people doing the entry? You have several people working simultaneously? Yeah. That, by the way, is one of the things actually, online things like Google Docs I kind of have mixed feelings about, but I do like the fact that you can have multiple people in the same document at the same time. Sometimes, at certain phases, because you can see who's where. And that can basically say, hey, this is my paragraph, you go 3 paragraphs down, that kind of thing. It can be a handy way, because I remember in the old days getting 3 separate edited copies of the course catalog for the school, and each person's had different corrections. And how do you reconcile them? That can be real.
And if you got egos on both sides, you've got problems.
Lord, yeah. So at least you can tighten that loop by having them argued out in the paragraph right there at the spot, right? So it's a little bit, I got mixed feelings about that, but it can be useful in certain cases. So keep in mind what kind of tools you can use to collaborate together in a shorter period of time. Planning. Okay, so, we keep using these hard stop examples. We've got 24-hour submission just because it makes it a little easier. But do keep in mind that sometimes you'll have a more amorphous, you're not sure what the end of this is going to be. So just keep that in mind. It's just easier to first learn ICS by having these hard stop examples. So like Titanic, we're going to have all these milestones, right? First draft has got to be ready by this point. Second draft by this point. Final draft by this point. Short break. Oh, by the way, in planning with timeline, is everyone going to be working the entire 24 hours? I kind of hope not, unless you're, it kind of depends on who you are. So you might have shifts, right? Should the shifts be like this? End to end? Or should, see, you see where the hands? Or shifts overlap a little bit? Why? Yep, carry out information. What I could call passing the baton. You have a little bit of time to basically say, well, here's where we're at with this, here's where this. I'm going to grab some carrots and lunches and take a nap, but here's where we're at, and you know how to reach me if you need to ask me more questions. Because that transfer of the duties, right? That can be a real important thing. And like Titanic, when do we want our grant, when do we be clicking on the button? It's like our lifeboat's in the water, right? Half an hour before, because computers never fail. Websites are always up. Whenever I have trouble with grants.gov, I used to work.
Half an hour before and 10 minutes after you did your backup.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Half an hour before and 10 minutes after you did your backup. Yeah, because I used to work for a company. Yeah, I like that. So I saw a hand up, I'm sorry, yes.
Would planning also include a backup plan if we don't get this particular grant, like maybe applying for another grant?
I think so. Yeah, so for this particular incident, you focus entirely on this. But post-incident, like after you've done submission, then you might lean back and say, so if we don't get this, what do we do next? What's our plan B? So that's very good. That's very good. I like that forward thinking. That's excellent. So you get your RFPs together, when all this stuff happens, when you click on the submit button, communicate goals to team leaders. So an important aspect of planning is also making sure the plan is being communicated. What is the plan? So make sure everybody's really clear, because it doesn't do any good to set a deadline and then not let everybody know what the deadline is, because they're not going to know that. We're still working on it, right? Finance and admin for a grant proposal. That one seems pretty obvious, perhaps, but still, let's discuss some things about that. What do you think? Yeah, okay, count.
Well, you just have to create the budget that when you're submitting for those RFPs, you have to put a budget in there for most of them, so.
In fact, it's funny.
You have to be your partner all the way through, really.
Exactly. And in fact, I've worked on several grant proposals, and a lot of times when I work on applications, they have a format they want the budget to be in. I just got one that I'm working on right now for E9R. I looked all over the place for what they want their budget for, but they don't have one. They just say submit a budget. So I went and talked to our finance guy. I said, have you done this before? Because almost everything I've ever worked on, they have a format they want. I said, yeah, no, several times that happened. And in that case, we can just do whatever we want as long as it's clear.
Yeah, we just did one that didn't have that, and then 3 weeks in, they sent us a thing and said, we need your budget to be in this format, even though it never said that.
Fair enough.
Sometimes they do that too.
Yeah, fair enough. But the thing is that, Harry had done this enough times, he knows basically how to provide a budget in a comprehensible format for people to ask for one. And I think it's usually, because he's been doing this for years. And E9R is funded by like 60 different sources, so. Yeah, so crunch numbers, prepare the budget. And by the way, you may want to keep track of the cost of what it took to actually do this. That's your sort of separate cost, right? And then again, like the bake sale, keep records, because there's your plan B. Okay, we didn't get this one, but Man, that was some good writing we did in that paragraph. That objective statement and that deliverables plan was awesome. We can reuse that, right? That makes subsequent proposals go much easier. Okay, yay, we got it. Recommendations. So socialize this. I've said this several times because it's so important, but basically just use language every day. After you're done, take the poster and stick it up on a wall near a vending machine. Make copies of it if you want. Look at the chart and think of something you guys have already done through the lens of ICS. Some kind of event that's already happened. How could ICS have helped you make that work for you? There's a book called Talent is Overrated by a guy named Jeff Colvin. He uses a phrase called deliberate practice. An example he gives actually involves a comedian named Chris Rock, who kept very detailed records on how well his jokes went, how well certain jokes went in certain regions of the country. Like this one plays really well in the West, not so well on the East Coast. And he basically ended up with a good collection of humor that worked pretty universally. Deliberate practice, not just kind of hodgepodge. He actually was being very thoughtful and mindful of how things went. A lot of performers are like that, I've noticed. My oldest daughter's actually an actor, and I was actually astonished at how well organized she is. Actors take lots of notes, you know. I mean, the scripts are marked up all over the place for things. Disaster organization chart. I have a couple of examples, but I'll show you real quickly. You know, and in any kinds of experience, life experience you have. So your clients may have life experiences. Something that happened, like, you know, gosh, I had to do this garage sale or estate sale recently, and boy, it was really complicated. Well, I know what you're looking to help you with that. I know about ICS. If you guys know of any in fire services, especially, feel free to, like, you know, at a cocktail party someday, ask about ICS. I'm sure we'll want to talk about in great detail. So this is a simple chart that Berkeley has in one of their pieces of documentation. This is what the city of San Leandro has. So you'll notice they actually have things broken down into more detailed categories. So remember, logistics is people and stuff. Personnel, care and shelter, transportation, utilities. Communications falls under people and stuff. You know, Santa Rosa has a fairly complex chart with actual names on it, although as we pointed out, this is very flexible. You can actually switch name tags easily. This is the city of Oakland. And again, their logistics has things like information, communications, and computer systems are two subcategories of information. So whatever organization works best for you, this is the kind of thing you can use to kind of get deeper into it. I actually kind of like this one from the Texas State Education, because I think that's kind of like their operations. This is kind of worth noting. Safety security is responsible for overall safety, but site security, interestingly enough, falls under operations, making sure that things are secure at your actual site. So safety security in general is like safety procedures for your personnel to remain safe, but making sure that nobody walks onto the scene of something where you had a shake or a fire. That's actually kind of more of an operations thing. Also, mental health response team tends to fall under operations, at least it does for the state of Texas. So these are some real world examples you can kind of leverage for that. Have fun with it. Couch data preparedness is a great thing. Judge your success by level participation, and remember that everyone is a part of the team. What I like about when I do this for some organizations is that there's actually a story where somebody who's a member of the custodial staff responded brilliantly to a fire that was on the premises. They were the one-person ICS, and then became a multi-person ICS pretty quickly. I do other trainings, I'm not going to worry with that. Just keep in mind that it's kind of a way of being. You know, so one of my examples I like to give, we call wayfinding. When you give directions at your facility, tell people, okay, so the bathroom is 2 feet down from the fire extinguisher and right by the evacuation door. So if you make that part of your vocabulary, people are like, oh, I don't know what a fire extinguisher is. Yeah, I do trainings. Yes, I do trainings. Come talk to me about that. This is our executive director. This is me. I mean, you guys ever want to send a thank you to Old Police Laws, I wouldn't stop you. And this is how you can connect to us. Thank you all very, very, very much. I really appreciate it.